Damien, whenever you're
Jamie's not coming.
Are you ready? Well, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order, if I can. Could we please stand? We do, well, just, we do have the members present, and Jamie, you are online with us, is that correct?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thanks. So we do have a quorum present, including Jamie Dorr, who's with us online. So if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. I don't have any comments for the evening. I just want to point out we do have some action items under old business. We are going to be taking up 4 policies on second reading, and those will we will consider those for adoption tonight. I also do want to note that, and Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, we are going to do the first reading of the budget tonight, and under 13.0 for next meeting dates, 13.2, we've listed the public forum to discuss the budget as Monday, March 26th. And I think we are going to change that date to April 5th. And it'll be at 6 o'clock at the middle school.
Well, it's right the way it is. The first one is the regular board meeting is April 26th. And then 13.2 says April 5th. You have the same
Well,
one?
I
We
don't
don't
it
have
says
that one.
March 26th, and that's,
Which
which is a
isn't-
Friday.
It's not a
Yeah, it's not
Monday.
a
anymore.
Monday.
Okay, somehow I got the right one, you don't.
Okay, so I guess
Okay,
we have the wrong agenda, but the meeting, just in case this is the posted agenda, the one that we have,
yeah, we'll make sure.
just to make sure that everyone's aware, the meeting, the public forum to discuss the budget will be on April 5th, which is not a Monday.
It is Monday.
That is a
It
Monday.
is a
That is a Monday.
The
So
26th
it's
is
gonna-
not.
So it's going to be April 5th at the middle school at 6 o'clock. And the reason we're recommending the change is to give the public more time and the board more time to consider the budget that we have in front of us for questions. So again, we hope that the public will take every opportunity to participate in those public forums and give the board feedback on the budget. This is a good opportunity, or the right opportunity, for the public to raise questions and concerns as we describe and discuss the budget going forward. Okay, item 4.0, we have the approval of minutes for February 22nd. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second that.
Motion by Lorna, second by Bill. Okay, any corrections, amendments to the minutes? No?
No.
No, not, okay.
Page 22.
All in favor of approving the minutes? Any opposed? No. Jamie, you're gonna have to shout out there so you can get your vote. Jamie?
I'm not opposed.
Okay. Thank you. Item 5.0, adjustments to the agenda. Patrick, any adjustments? I don't have any as well. Oh. Item 6.0, public session. We do have one individual who's called, request to talk to the board. Jamie, is that correct? You want to connect them? Sure. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. You've called into the RSU1
Yes.
board? Yep. If you
Yes,
could
this
just,
is Steve Christie.
if you could just tell us your name and go ahead.
Sure. Hey, my name is Stephen Griffey. I'm a parent in Woolwich. And my question was in regards to plans for next year and the middle school in particular. And was interested in just kind of what your plans are. Are you anticipating full in class learning? And what we need to do to get there.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen.
Sure.
We are going to be discussing as item 12.2 on the agenda, later in the agenda, we are going to be getting an update on those educational plans from the building principals. So if you stay with us through the meeting, hopefully you'll get a response to your question.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's it, right? David, thanks. Okay. Item 7.0, we have listed as staff reports, but there are none. I do want to ask a couple questions though on the building reports, and if other board members have questions. We do have some of the principals online with us. The first question, I'm not sure the director of adult ed is online, but the report on Mary Meeting Adult Education was, referred to the fact that they were still housed at the old Moores, but they were looking for space. And I just wanted to be sure that the search for new space keeps the program in Bath. Patrick, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Mary Meeting Adult Ed is located in the old Morse right now, and the state did not fund for them to come to the new high school. So, we've talked to them recently, and they would like to move from where they are, which is over by the library, if you know what that is, moving over to where the CTE offices are. So when you come into CTE, the old center, right there to the right, they would have their offices, and then they would use the conference room and 301, which is where we usually meet for different meetings. So that would provide them with enough space for students to come in and kind of get some help with the high set, but also on the right, the 301, that could be used for some different enrichment things, a computer lab, things like that. So the plan is for over April break is Mary Meeting, I think we'll be hiring a moving company just to move them over to that space. And I think right now the hope is that they would stay there through next year. And again, our plan still is we would have the building until the end of August. So Mary Meeting will have to talk with the city of Bath about, being in there for next year. Again, the hope would be that we still would have our classes, enrichment classes at the new Morse High School in the evening. But as far as a daytime office area, it would be at the old Bath Den.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah.
Thanks. I also had a question for Katie. Katie, you're out there?
I'm right here.
Yeah.
Can you see me okay?
Yep.
Okay.
This related to the Distance Learning Academy, your update.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, I mean, there certainly is a lot of uncertainty about what next year looks like. Our scheduling and our programming goes, but I'm just hoping that some of the lessons, some of what's been gained by launching the Distance Learning Academy and, still has applicability regardless of what the level of in-class learning is next year, whether we're still hybrid, whether we're all in class. But, and, I'm not asking you to necessarily report on what some of those gains might have been, what we might have gained from this distance learning academy experience. But I hope that we do see some, some results, some perhaps something, results carried into the future that have resulted from our experience there. I don't know if you want to comment on that now or just think about it. It's up to you. But.
Yeah, I would be happy to. I think there's no doubt that things we've learned in Distance Learning Academy will carry over. But I would actually say that all of our teachers who've now at this point been fully remote, they have been hybrid, and they've now also been in person, but with new digital tools, have all learned things about efficiency around the use of technology in ways that we haven't used it before. Could you try? Sorry, my watch thinks I'm talking to it. Around technology and the ways that we're basically using it around how we grade students. So yeah, I think that the list is actually quite long, and it's not necessarily related to just the Distance Learning Academy. So I know that's not a very specific answer, but I guess simply my answer would be absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's something we'll look for going forward, I guess, as we begin to talk more concretely about what next year is going to look like.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Steve.
Okay. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Anita?
was also wondering if there might be any possibility of looking at the DLA program as a model to add to our alternative ed options in the future. Now that we have this experience, there might be something thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we could consider, I think, in general across the whole state, is how does this model of learning fit into what we're already doing? How could this maybe become a pathway that helps students in the future? I think the tricky thing about anything is, staffing it. I mean, right now we put a lot of money into staffing a full program. I mean, it's actually like we're running a completely different school. And so we would just have to think about how to creatively do that. But I think that first.
Oops.
Nope. Froze. Okay, we'll come back. If Katie ever unfreezes, maybe we'll get the rest of them. Are you there, Katie?
Yes.
Yeah, you froze a bit toward the end of your comments. So.
Well, you missed all of the great things I said. Sorry.
Okay. But I think we got the sense of what you're saying, so hopefully that answered Anita's question.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
The only other thing I'd like to, just on the, again, on the building reports, Fisher Mitchell commented the comments there regarding voltaic piles. And I had no idea what a voltaic pile was. I had all kinds of images, but I found that to be kind of an interesting comment that Ross, description that Ross went into. All right, 8.0, committee reports, 8.1, Finance Committee update.
Sure. Just let everybody know we've had our 2 Mondays in succession of kind of the first blush at all the budget, specifically non-labor for all the different departments and what folks are looking at. And as always, it takes some time, but I want to thank Patrick and Deb in particular for really pulling everything together. I know that's difficult and takes a lot of time, but it's, my experience, always well worth it, because it's the best way to really get a feel for where everybody is, and from aspirations to essential needs and everything else. And I thought it went very well. And of course, that led into what then tonight will be our first budget, first reading of the budget. And the budget committee will go forward looking at everything and preparing for the public meetings and what will still need to be modified and adjusted. But I thought it was very successful first couple of sessions as we begin this budget process for next year. So I thought it went well.
Thanks, Lou. Any questions for Lou? I know there's been interest in perhaps doing a committee meeting next week, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're looking at having a meeting next week because I think people want to ask some more questions about where we are and any adjustments that have been made or what we're looking at. So we're finally, we may have to adjust the timing of that. So we're looking at that right now.
Okay. So
we'll let everybody know. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll get that
data
out to everybody.
Okay.
Be midpoint next week sometime.
Yep. And just to, Patrick, maybe you can, what materials are on the website related to the budget?
I believe after tonight, Deb will put everything up there. She'll put, the general overview. She'll put the things that the packet we handed out to you today, and also each cost center's kind of overview as well. And then all of the ADS sheets will be up there available as well. But it might be at the end of the day tomorrow, Wednesday at the latest. But we also send it to the towns as well, so they have copies of it.
And that's just, just to add to all that for the public to understand all the hard work that goes in from the department heads, the administrators, all the teachers, everyone has input into what these departments done. And spent a lot of time on it, and all the administrators came to us, each head of the department, to tell us, where they're at. A lot of hard work goes into this, and there is a lot of detail. So people really want to know what's what. It's all in there.
So, and I just want to add my thanks to Patrick and Deb and the administrative team, and to the board members who were able to attend the meetings. So there'll be a volume of detail on the website within a day or so for the public to look at, and please take advantage of that. And it's your opportunity to take a look at the budget, to raise questions to the board regarding detail of the budget proposal. Okay, thanks, Lou. Item 8.2, legislative update, Lauren?
Yes, so today I just printed off the Education and Cultural Affairs calendar for this week. They're here over 2 days. We'll be having some, other than work sessions, we'll be having public hearings on 10 education-related bills. I printed off the Maine School Board Legislative Commission Committee, position on bills. And there's 141 right now bills related to education. So today I wanted to just ask the board, when I report to you, which I enjoy doing, I just want to make sure it's useful with so much on the plate of this committee, the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. So I don't know if you would want me to maybe report on, or if there's certain criteria you want me to report on, like if there's unfunded mandates or loss of local control, anything related to COVID, anything that you think our department heads would want to know, although, I know a lot of them already have other people, like for food service. Tim has people updating him on food service changes, and Justin likewise. And I know the Maine School Board Association obviously has a committee specifically for this. So it's really active right now. So I just didn't know what you guys thought might be, what you want to hear, I guess, from me the most. You can mull it over too if you want to.
Yeah. Thanks. Any comments for elected Warren? I mean, there is a great deal. Obviously, a lot of bills are filed, and not many move forward. In the end, and maybe it's too early in the session to figure out which ones are going to are actually going to survive committee, committee action.
Yeah, and I know there's some, like, I did email Tim today about a few that had already heard about. One is to make sure to require a 30-minute lunch period. One is on making sure we expand opportunities for local foods. Special ed, there's some changes with IEP, the IEP process. But then there's some too that I just personally have interest in that if we don't know about, maybe we want a chance to weigh in on. They have not come up yet. One is dealing, again, I don't remember the bill number, but one is dealing with the use of holding back recess or any suspension for grade 5 and up. It was opposed last year, it did not pass, but it came back. So anything that affects local control like that, I just have a personal interest in. So anyway, that's, there's some COVID related bills. There's one on student retention, whether a parent can choose to retain their child if they don't feel they should be advanced to the next level. So there's a lot, and it's interesting, but I want it to be helpful for you guys too, so.
I personally find that if you go to the testimony section for these bills, and if you read the testimony that Vicki from MMSA, Vicki Waskaleski, I can't pronounce her last name, she provides, she's our government relations person. Right. And to me, that's probably one of the most insightful kind of testimonies that you get because it's well written and it's kind of to the point and it speaks from a pretty clear perspective on policy because she's been there for so long.
Right. And
so
that's after the testimony's taken place. I just didn't know if there's any we ever want to, but that's true. I could go back and watch her virtually.
Or just get her written testimony is a great, I mean, that's right. I would often just read that after to try to get a sense of, but I think the most interesting thing will be, is there any proposed changes to the biennial budget? Yeah. Which is, that's really gonna, I think, gonna be where the biggest impact that we're gonna have most immediately, it seems.
And I know they've met, that was earlier, but I can see if there's anything out there.
Yeah, appropriation is scheduling any, I mean, I don't think the governor's office has come out specifically yet, but I think everyone's waiting to find out how much money we're getting. Not only how much, but when and what it can be used for. Because the towns know they're going to get a lot of money, but it's not clear to the towns if they can, how they can use this money to pay for education or pay for other things or what, so they're still waiting on clarification from Maine Municipal and the feds.
Okay, and the other thing I meant to tell you, Patrick, the list you gave me from the superintendent's group, I did look and pretty much all of them align with school board association.
Yeah, I think it's financial implications and things that are just not practical, or that it would be good for the board to get hold on. And again, we can work together. I know sometimes maybe we don't always connect, but Vicki Wallach is the person that's good, and she's usually we email her and she can get back to us pretty quick. So right now it's still early because again, it can be, what do you say, 140 or 150, right, and they, a lot of them go by the wayside, and then it usually MSBA and MSSA usually hone in on 5 to 10 that are really concerning, or they want to get behind one of the two.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lana. Thanks for taking this on. Item 8.3, the high school building project update.
Yeah, I mean, since the last time we met, we were able to welcome students in on the 25th and the 26th, and hopefully for the board members who were there, and for me and I know the administrators and the teachers that were down there that first day in the lobby. It was very gratifying to see the students' faces come in, and some of them have been in there before for tours, but quite a few of them hadn't. And, for them to grab their schedules, try to figure out where they were going. But, just the looks throughout those 2 days of being up there in the hallways. And, I think the school looks wonderful. We've been very pleased. Even it surpassed our expectations, to be quite frank. I mean, there's still some issues. We have some HVAC, we have some plumbing, some electrical, PA system isn't, every room isn't crystal clear, or it isn't as loud, or so it's too loud sometimes, and that was being worked on this afternoon after students left. just a reminder, we do have contractors in there from 2:30 to about 10 o'clock at night, as well as on Saturdays. So like this past Saturday was fairly busy because the mural went up in the gym, the scoreboards, they showed up during the school day so we got those in. So we're working around their schedules, but it's been, again, I think it's been very positive, and the goal is April 1st, that the auditorium, they still believe they'll be done the auditorium and they'll be done the cosmetology area. So, and that Harvey will be out of the building completely, and they'll be, so to speak, on call when we need them to come and fix things and to organize things. So the canopy is going to be done in June. We agreed to that this morning. It's a collaborative effort between the Shelter Institute and Crooker, because Crooker has to be there to do certain pieces of this as well. So we just didn't want to rush it during April vacation, and it would just be smoother if we wait until June. So that's one thing. A couple other things that will be coming this week, the graphics that will go on the sign down on Congress Street, those could be up as early as tomorrow to complete that sign, the roadside sign. Outside turf scoreboard is being ordered, hopefully be in 3 or 4 weeks. That will be installed. And just outside landscaping that we have to do, that Crooker will come back and do that piece. So, Jonah or Tanner, anything that, any thoughts? You guys have been in there for a couple of weeks now, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely stuff like the PA, things are getting ironed out, but it really is just a gem of the school.
People have begun sort of figuring it out. If the layout was initially confusing for people with the whole sort of H idea, but now it's really easy to find where you're going to classes, and it's a more comfortable place to learn. Definitely.
I can't imagine that you find that school more complicated in terms of getting around than Old Moore School.
Yeah. It's nice to be in one building the whole time now.
And the address, Patrick? Woohoo.
Yeah, the address, that's another piece of the same company that's providing the graphics for a lot of the things that the 826 will be coming, and
Bath said yes, I was wondering.
yeah, Bath did, and I think we just have
Nice.
to firm up some state details, which I think are gonna be done,
Okay,
and then we'll be able to do that. And then we gotta add the sign down on the main road. So again, there's certainly a list of things that we have to do, and again, there's certain components that will be done by April 1st, that will be done by Harvey, and of course, there'll be certain things that Dave's crew was gonna have to do after Harvey walks away, that there'll still be things to do. But financially, we're still in a good spot for the whole project. But again, we've got a wish list now, or not only a wish list, we've got, some other items that may come up. But as an example, I don't know if you guys have, I assume you have a science class right now, or an art class. And I don't know if you've noticed the difference between those classrooms and then your other classrooms, like the acoustics, right? Because they have open ceilings, which is what we wanted. And then we wanted to wait to see what the acoustics would be like. And it's come out that we do need some acoustical help, so to speak, in those rooms. And so that's something that the state is going to help fund. So we'll pay our small portion, and then they'll do that piece. Other things outside, plug in for electric cars, that doesn't exist right now, but that's something that the state is interested in partnering with us. So that could happen a couple of spaces out by the student parking lot, or staff and student parking lot. So just a variety of different things that we still have to work through, but I have to say, we meet weekly and the list is shrinking, which is positive. So.
can we generate the electricity for the electric cars through our geothermal solution? That'd be kind of nice, huh?
Put it back on the grid.
Okay, well, thanks, Patrick. Any questions, of Patrick?
And again, we're open to, I know we have to talk about bigger celebrations, and hopefully as we move forward through the spring, we can get there. But we are, again, we're open. We'll probably start setting up some more tours for, like maybe groups of 10 and under to go through the building after students are out of there during days. So I know that, one group in town, I think we're giving a tour April 7th, but again, we'll put those up on our website and offer some more.
I told you I wanted to hang on long enough to cut the ribbon.
Yeah, you will.
Did you buy the ribbon?
I haven't bought it
Can we
yet.
get state help in buying the ribbon?
We can handle that
Patrick, anybody that comes into the building has to wear a mask, right? Okay.
Yeah, people that I've spoken to or have approached me have been members of the community who have been through the building. It's kind of a universal response of how excited people are about the building and pleased with the way the project turned out. So
We're gonna have an alumni day when we can walk them through and point to all of the things which they requested that we followed through on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the, the alumni that we've talked with and worked with about the alumni room and things like
Right,
that, we've, I think Eric's done a nice job of, keeping in close communication. For example, we received another very generous donation from a class for the M on the Montgomery Theater. And so
Right.
we had a design done for the M, and it just didn't really, it didn't look as close as the one that is there now in the old Morse. And so we're pulling back and go with a different company. But again, another donation that we're
Yeah.
gonna help make that as
Yeah.
close as possible, but yeah.
Keep that money coming.
I'm gonna,
Need your help.
okay, thanks. I'm just gonna ask that if people want to speak, just raise your hand so that, we can help those who are tuned in to follow where the conversation is going, okay? Okay, any other questions of Patrick? No? Okay, thanks, Patrick. 9.0, Student Board Representative Report. Tanner, you want to go first or Jenna?
Sure, we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit here.
No, you can't do that. One has to go and then-
All right, so I got a couple sports things. Morse cheer won the Cheers from the Heart competition a couple days ago. Winter sports obviously are all wrapped up now. Girls swim was the KVAC Class B champions. Boys swimming were runners up. That's a very successful season for our swimmers.
Yeah, swim's been something the school's been proud of since its founding. With winter sports being all wrapped up, I filmed the varsity basketball games this year, and I was really fortunate to be able to get in and see the new gym before a lot of people did, and that was a good experience. And now unified basketball is starting up, and I think that's a great program, and I'm really glad that we have that at our school. And I signed up for baseball, and that's just an indication of how spring sports are starting to pick up steam here and taking advantage of the stretch of nice weather we're having. And the best art and writing of Morse is open and looking for student submissions, and that's a pretty unique and creative way to sort of get the student voice out there.
Yeah, showcase the artistic side of the student body.
Yeah, and as time has been moving on, I've been hearing opinions from students on the potential of moving back full time, and I think it's generally a positive feeling about that potential, but they do have an understanding that at this point in the year, the high school, with the size of its classes and stuff, might not be as feasible.
Okay. Any questions of Tanner or John?
I do
Lauren?
quickly. I was gonna ask both of you tonight, without putting you in the hot seat, just what the pulse has been of I would say you guys are adults pretty much, so what the pulse has been from the student body and going back 100%, knowing that we're so late in the year and wanting to, but knowing your schedules are set and just wanting to know either if you have heard a consensus or if you're getting a consensus in the future.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as time goes on, the question is being raised more and more, is it whether or not it's worth it for the last couple months of the school year, but right now, can't count the chickens before they hatch sort of thing. We just have to make sure that it can be done safely at all. And then you can talk about the whether or not it's worth it for the time remaining.
What have the seniors been saying as far as leading up to graduation and all those year-end events?
I think it's just kind of been accepted that graduation will be the same as last year, similar as last year, which is amazing, went very successfully. So I think it's the senior class is looking forward to it. I certainly am.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Tanner, you're the senior, so I did have just a question on, you've got a class that is leaving their last year's experience, at the high school level, going into what is probably an unknown experience in college. And I guess it's tough. I mean, you've had a lot of disruption in your final year of high school and likely to have disruption your first year of college. I mean, how are you guys coping with that fairly well? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. It's been scary, obviously, for many reasons, but, this sort of trial and tribulation is only building character right now, I guess, making us stronger, more adaptive to our surroundings, our education. So, and I think in college, you need to be a little bit quicker on your feet or more flexible, I think. And so this is a good way, little practice.
Well said.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Steve,
Yep.
Tanner, I was told as a kid, the most difficult things in my life, they were always referred to as wonderful character building opportunities. And I got to be a bit younger than you are now when I started responding, I have enough character, thank you very much. I admire that you're looking at it in that respect, and I concur with you, but.
Just gotta grin and bear it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks both of you, thanks. Okay, item 10.0, superintendent's report. 10.1, good news, Patrick.
Yeah, last meeting, I mentioned that we had 2 teachers that were nominated for a county teacher of the year, and we just didn't have them all in at that point because they come in at various times, depending on the nomination. So I would like to list them all tonight, so I'm not leaving anybody out. But last time I mentioned Leslie Gallant, who's a teacher at Dyke Newell, and Suzanne Davey, who's a teacher at Morse. But we also have Lisa Gastingway, who's a teacher at Pittsburgh, and we have Julie Williams and Beth Poles, who are from Woolwich. And so again, their next step would be, if they choose, they would fill out all the paperwork, go through the process to be considered for Saginaw County Teacher of the Year. And if if one of them were selected for that, then they would choose to go forward with Maine Teacher of the Year. So congratulations to all of them.
Congratulations.
Parent-teacher conferences this Thursday, Friday. There's a strong sign up at all levels at this point. Intramurals at our middle schools and high schools, we are really offering quite a few opportunities. Some that have already started, and they're going to go through the spring. And it could be anything from volleyball to archery to floor hockey. I mean, we're just a lot of different opportunities to keep kids active and connected. And also, you saw in Eric's report, I think, maybe Brandon's as well, but just the numerous clubs that have been up and running for quite some time now, again, just to provide those opportunities. Just mentioned to you that we got a $170,000, there's a grant that we received thanks to Dean Emerson. And what this is basically, it's an RUS grant, but it's basically a distance learning opportunity that we have. And we've been approved through this grant to equip up to 20 classrooms to enhance remote learning. And that includes Promethean boards, document cameras, Polycom video conference units, as well as equipment to extend the wireless network to BMS and McMahon complex as well, for the community and for students. And then lastly, I just mentioned the transportation contract that did come in. Bids came in on Friday. We need we opened the bids, but we need this week to really look through those bids to see the fine print. And we told the companies that bid on the transportation contract that we would get back to them by this Friday. And I'll keep the board informed as we learn more, as we dive into those proposals and bids.
You got 2.
What's that?
I'm sorry. You got 2?
Yes. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. Any questions of Patrick? Thanks, Patrick. 10.2, financial report, Deb.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Tonight, we're looking at the month of February. So we're 2/3 through the year. And we have spent $21.6 million. We have 10.4 encumbered for our salary and benefits. So based upon looking at last year, we're spending basically at our normal pace. We should have, a little bit more left in some of our field trip lines. Maybe things will, kick up here by the end of the year, but there'll be probably a little bit more expected in our balance than what we have had in some past years. But basically, we're on track with everything. There isn't anything that's jumped out that's unexpected, such as outside tuitions or transportation or anything like that at this point in time. As far as revenue, we've brought in 65%. Last year it was 61, so it's a little bit higher than last year, but that's basically the big debt service payment that increased the state subsidy. And moving on to the high school, as Patrick said, we're in a good spot with the budget where we've got a couple of million left to finalize and end the whole project, and then the state will come and do a full audit. So we're in a good spot with that. And our federal funds, our ESSER, Corona, Corona 1 and Corona 2, we're spending basically like we had anticipated and sent that spreadsheet out to you before. So we should be right on track with what we plan to spend that money on. It's been busy in the finance world, and I just want to thank everybody for their contribution towards putting this budget together and coming in and doing their presentations, and so we're off to a good start. That's it.
Okay. Thanks, Deb. Any questions of Deb?
I will
Okay.
post everything tomorrow on the website.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
And I also send everything out to the town offices at that point too, so
Thank
we'll
you.
get the word out on that first draft.
Do the town offices get the full detailed,
They usually get that packet, and then they can go to our website if they want more.
and
but we
get the
usually
detail sheet?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, but we usually get the packet that we gave you tonight.
okay. Thanks, Deb.
You're welcome.
11.0, old business. 11.1, we have a COVID-19 vaccine update. Patrick?
Yeah, I think Katie's,
I'm right here. I'm going to keep my camera off this time like everybody else so I don't freeze. Okay, so this is just a quick update on what we've done to make sure that all of our staff is aware of what access they have to the vaccine. We did send a letter out on March 11th, just so the board is aware, that had information about how to get a vaccine through Midcoast Hospital, as well as Walgreens, Walmart, Hannaford, Northern Light, and Central Maine Medical Center. We know that all of our staff who are 60 and above and wanted to receive a vaccine have gotten an appointment. And then those who are younger than 60, some have had success getting appointments, others have not yet. But we do know that some folks are getting off wait lists at the last minute, and that there are certain times of day and during the week when new appointments are posted. And so I think our teachers are getting savvier, we all are, to figure out when to go on different websites to look for vaccines. I think they all would be getting appointments if the state had enough vaccine, but that's not yet the case. And so there are people who don't yet have an appointment, but we hope that will change soon, with each announcement that's made from the state and the federal government. With folks who are vaccinated, we are collecting the vaccine cards, and a copy of those needs to be handed into everyone's school nurse, depending on where they work. The reason for this is in a close contact situation where we would normally have staff quarantine, if our staff who've had a vaccine are 2 weeks out from their second shot, they no longer have to quarantine. So that's one of the changes. And then the other big change for our staff as well, which will help us if we have these cards on file, is if folks are traveling within the US and are also 2 weeks out from completing their vaccine series, they are exempt from PCR testing and a 10-day quarantine when they return to Maine. And so those are the two biggest changes if we do have staff who we know have opted into getting a vaccination. I think the only thing that, we made sure to put in the letter that the board should be aware of is obviously all of our masking, hand sanitation, social distancing, all of that will obviously continue because not everyone is vaccinated. So we need to make sure we're keeping everyone safe. And also, if somebody does have any symptoms, they should actually still follow, whether vaccinated or not, our protocols. Because as we know, the vaccine is not foolproof. And so we made sure that getting the vaccine series doesn't mean that staff should not be doing their daily health screener and making sure that they're well enough to come to school. So that's all I wanted to update the board on. Are there any questions?
No. Jen?
Hi, Katie, it's Jenny. Is there a way to determine a percentage of our staff that's vaccinated now, or a percentage of our staff that is either vaccinated or on the roster to be vaccinated, or?
No, there isn't right now because it just recently opened up for educators. That most people, you wouldn't turn in your vaccine card until you've done your second shot.
Okay.
And so there aren't many people we have, unless they were kind of in the first wave of some of our staff who have more of a medical position, or unless they were older, we wouldn't have their card yet. I think we have the gist of people saying, oh, I got one, I've got my first one, but we don't have many records yet, and it would make sense that we wouldn't.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? I mean, the board at its last meeting in February, we did discuss at that point, a resolution. I mean, the world has changed since then in terms of, I think it changed within 3 or 4 days of our meeting, frankly, in terms of the state's approach to vaccinating the entire population, and then more specifically the protocols as they dealt with teachers, which again was largely federally driven, at one point. So I'm going to assume we did not take any formal action on the resolution other than just come to a consensus agreement that one would be put together. But I'm going to suggest at this point, unless people feel otherwise, that there really isn't a purpose in doing such a resolution. We teachers, the board's discussions showed that we were in support of advocating on behalf of our staff. They now have that priority. There are other factors, as Katie alluded to, that have made that process a little bit difficult sometimes to work with, and that shortage of vaccines dosages is still really the determining element to the speed at which teachers and the population generally can be vaccinated at this point. So unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to assume that the purpose for the resolution just doesn't exist at this point. So, any other comments for Katie on this?
I have a question. This is Jamie.
Yeah, hi, Jamie. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that I know that for some places when they open up appointment spots, those spots can be gone in minutes. And I know for some of our local spots that might happen at noontime, which is prime teacher time. So I want to make sure that we are supporting teachers, even if they just get the extra 5 minutes to be able to sign up for those appointments. Do you know, Katie, if that's been a problem, that teachers aren't able to get to the spots because they are teaching?
I haven't heard, no one has said that to me. I think people are trying their best. I think that some people have, stayed up probably later than they maybe should have, because I know some refresh at midnight because they really wanted to get their name on a list. But I would think, Jamie, that that's actually a really good point, and that we can make sure to reach out to staff, and I know all the principals are listening, that if they are having, and I see Sandra's already saying what I'm about to say, which is that we have people cover for each other, or a principal cover and step in if they're worried about not having an appointment yet. And so we can absolutely make that happen. That's a great point.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Thanks,
And
Kate.
we also, this is Sandra, and I'm
Go ahead.
sure it's happening in other schools as well. And we also make every attempt to cover for a teacher if the appointment happens to be at 2 or 1:30. People have been very generous about moving things around so that a teacher can leave to get that coveted appointment.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Katie. 11.2, we have 4 policies that are on second reading, and unless there's any objection, I'll list them all as one, and we'll consider them through a single motion if you can. We have the second reading of policy BDB, which is on board officers. Second reading on policy BCB, which is board member conflict of interest. Policy BDG, school attorney legal services. And policy BE, which deals with regular board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve these policies?
I move to approve.
A motion from Lou, a second from Jen. Any discussion on these policies? If not, do I have a vote to approve? All in favor? Any opposed? Jamie, you're in favor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 12.0 new business, 12.1 personnel items. Patrick?
Yeah, just a informational item. Just would like to thank the following people. First, I'll just take them. First, Emily Bukowski, who's a physical education teacher, and also fills in as an interventionist at Woolwich and at Dyke Newell. I'd like to thank her for 3 years of service. Emily Roy, grade 5 teacher at Fisher Mitchell, effective March 26. I'd like to thank her for 4 years of service. Holly Feeney, who's our Dean of Students at BMS. I'd like to thank her for 23 years of service as teaching and a Dean of Students. And then lastly, Judy Mansfield, gifted and talented teacher district-wide. Thank her for, I believe this is accurate, 45 years of service to the district. So thank you to all of them, and we certainly will miss you.
Yep, I'll add my thanks to all of those staff folks for serving the RSU. Thanks, Patrick. Item 12.2, and this will probably be our longest discussion of the night. We have an update on increasing in-person learning, grades 6 through 12. Patrick?
Yeah, I won't take a lot of time here. I just basically, we're going to start with Jason Woolwich, go to Brandon at BMS, and then Eric, and then Julie. And, kind of first give you an update on some of the changes that they've made since the last time that we met and how that's going at each of their buildings, as well as the applicants that they've received and what the next steps are for them going forward to try to increase student learning time. So I would start with Jason.
Everybody hear me okay?
You can.
Okay. So I'll just kind of start off, give an update. Again, I put some of this in the report that you have in your packet, but just for everybody's benefit, kind of update on what we've been doing, what we've been able to put in place since the last meeting, and then kind of walk you through where we're at with trying to get more students back to us. So as you know, at the last meeting I presented where we would bring back, we would do like, I guess you would call it an alternating Wednesday schedule. Which basically would give our cohort groups 3 days of in-person learning every other week. So we've now had that in operation for 2 weeks. So each group has gotten their 3 days. It has been very successful. Attendance on both days was nearly full, beyond what we would expect, I guess, in the sense that it didn't seem to prevent any confusion for families and they were able to adjust to it. Students and teachers, I think, of course, you'd be hard pressed to get a middle school student to admit this, but they were definitely thrilled to be in place 2 days. You could tell just by the looks on their face. For us, well, I guess for everybody, but like it's the first time for those groups that they've had 2 consecutive days of in-person learning. So just to have even that little bit of consistency for that week was very positive. Both, Bath Bus went off and lunch services continued on without a glitch because really we weren't increasing numbers of students, just increasing the amount of time that they were with us with that extra day. We did have, prior to this, we were servicing kids, mostly students with our more significant needs through the IEP process. So that's what we had been inviting those kids in on Wednesdays. Obviously, for a couple of families, they were that was a change that they had to get used to. But we have since been able to move those kids. So basically, if they were getting 2 hours of extra service on a Wednesday, we've been able to work to extend their days on their other 2 cohort days, so that they can get that 2 hours on the other days that they're there, if that makes sense. So they might arrive early, but go home with a late group so that we can accommodate them in that time frame. So I think that's all been very successful to date, again, as a step forward in the right direction. In addition to this, Pat already alluded to it, but we have, been able to run our intramural program, really focused on the middle school students. Our basketball program this year, as you know, we have a basketball team, and like BMS and other schools, that became a little more of skills and drills for us, but we still had, full teams that participated in that, and that was a positive experience. We moved on from that now, and we're running an after-school program based on the cohort groups for dodgeball, so that's been in progress for about 3 weeks now, and that will run up until April break. We have other intramural programs scheduled to go on after break, which would include a running club, potentially a floor hockey. So we are, again, trying to just provide more opportunities for our middle school students. And I know Mr. Priest, Nate's going to talk about this a little later, but in conjunction, we are prepared to do a spring sports season following CDC guidance. Of course, the only wrinkle to that for us is that we don't actually offer spring sport interscholastically at WCS, but I've worked with Brandon and Randy Hickson and Shane, who is our athletic director at Woolwich. So our kids will still be able to participate in activities at BMS, and we're working through that right now as we start to get signups going and be able to coordinate that process. Lastly, we also, as you may or may not remember, I hired a new music teacher. That person came on fully on board in January, has used the first couple of months to get everything kind of in place and get set for, just our general music section. But now she is reaching out to our band and chorus students, both our previous students who have been involved in the program and our new 5th grade students who would be interested in beginning band. And she's doing virtual meetings with them, some virtual lessons, and then with the hopes of kind of meshing this all together, as the weather gets nicer outside and we get our tent back after April, and, we're able to explore what capacity we would be able to do those activities outside, especially as we make our way through the spring. So it's just been really kind of reaffirming to get some of these things back in place that, we have felt like, has been a loss for a while. And I think with everything we're learning, it's, slow and steady steps. Do you want me to pause? Do you have any questions about those pieces? If not, I'll go right into kind of the full in-person piece of it.
I have questions, but I mean,
Why don't you finish your presentation? And we'll loop back. You'll take questions on everything after.
Okay, sounds good. So with regards to, obviously, as all of this has been happening, we've been continuing the search to bring back everybody and find staff that we would need for full in-person learning. As of today, I'm checking with Anne Marie at Central. She actually forwards it to me, but I usually check in personally with her about 2 or 3 times a week. And as of today, we have had 1 applicant for the teaching positions that were posted and 2 applicants for an ed tech position. Unfortunately, the applicant for the teaching position was kind of a false hope. They currently are in Arkansas, and it was really their attempt to kind of get their foot in the door as we look ahead to next year. So wasn't able to help out for now. One of the ed tech applicants is someone who's currently hired as a floating sub. So if I were to hire this person, it would create another staffing hole in a different building. And the other applicant is, I believe, well, I know interviewed at BMS, kind of what Lorna was pointing out at the last meeting. It's so anyway, is there at BMS, I believe. So as anticipated, finding staff is our major challenge. We are also, I guess I would just say, between, sources, we're trying to go beyond just having people come to us, reaching out to past people that I've worked with or that we know, possibly some retired teachers that we've reached out to try to see if there's an interest there and able to kind of get them on board. Along with this, I do want the school board to know that we are looking at, all options. We've obviously started with just how would we be able to bring our 6 to 8 students back for kind of the traditional model in which we would want. But, realizing that may not be a possibility, we're looking at some out of the box options. These would, some things we've been just over the last week have been starting to look for because of not being able to find staff. Possibility of like 3 days of in school with 2 days of a learning hub, looking at what we might be able to change content wise that would then be able to impact the actual staffing needs that we would require. That any way we go, it's going to require staff, and that is still the biggest option. I do want to point out just some other things as we look at this, and as we're just things that I want you to be aware of as we are exploring these out of the box options. If we bring back all of our students, I've had conversations with Tim and Joanne, it will impact lunch service. So we will have to explore how we would accommodate that. Busing, I think, will be okay, but that's just still another consideration. One of the things that is tricky, as for those that really are familiar with our structure at Woolwich, and as we talked about when we brought K to 5 back, because we are so intertwined there that, if I only, for example, if I was only to bring back 1 grade, it creates curriculum and instructional challenges for the other grades. So if 6th grade came back, 7th and 8th grade, I wouldn't have enough teachers to teach that content. And again, I don't want to bore you with all the details of that right now. I can answer some, specifics around that if anybody has them, but it just creates a different layer because, it just because of the way essentially my middle school team teach all 3 grade levels, I guess is what I'm saying. And then just as the K-5 return, when we returned K-5, and as and I answered your questions at that time, it's a ripple effect through the whole building. We moved, middle school teachers. We moved to all the different kind of vacated spaces in the building, the music room, the media center. And, to bring back 6-8, we would be looking at doing this. It would have kind of that same ripple effect to the whole building in terms of how we're operating. So, just things that we're considering as we're looking at all of these kind of out of the box options to continue to get more kids back. So I think that's kind of what I have prepared for you. And now I would just take any questions you might have.
Jen, thanks. Thanks, Jason.
You're welcome, Steve.
Jason, remind me of what's the smallest middle school class that there is? Is that the 6th grade or the 7th grade?
Currently, it's the 7th grade.
And how
So
many students are in that?
how many students are in there? That would be 19 at the moment of in-person instruction.
So has there been any discussion on dividing those students such that they could come back?
Yes, there has been that discussion. I think that's a good example to kind of run with, Jen, in the sense that, as we look at that, if I bring back, it just depends. If I bring back one group, it just is that one group as they come back and they're split won't necessarily fit into the existing schedule. And then if I make them separate from the 7th, 6th, and 8th grade, then the teachers would be teaching, it would change the academic content for every other grade, if that makes sense.
So what if you divided them across the cohorts that already exist and they came back in cohort A and cohort B? Like, I mean, is it?
Yeah.
We're not worried about mixing cohorts. If the real issue is just space and staff, then if they're not going to make such a big impact in numbers, could they come back with both cohorts? If we divided them across all the cohorts, would they be significant enough to be able to fit a few more kids in a classroom, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's another option we would have to explore. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not as much about mixing the cohorts as it is if that extra group. So basically, if you're thinking about the academic schedule, it will add an extra teaching block because now there would be 2 of them there into our current schedule. So it's just a matter of how that shifts and how that changes the expectations of teachers in terms of what they're teaching, or if we can do it without that happening. That I know I've looked at it in terms of the 6th grade, not specifically the 7th grade, but I know with the 6th grade, that was the challenge because it would just, it would create this ripple effect through who's teaching what, that made it difficult at the time, but that certainly is an option we'll continue to explore.
And I guess my other question is, at some point, do we stop exploring and start saying, we're going to go with this decision, and then we're going to move forward to the end of the year, just to kind of get a definite for the kids and the parents at this point? Is there okay, we're staying in hybrid for the rest of the year, and we'll try to do other things in hybrid, but just to make a call so people know.
I mean, I think what you're saying is true, Jen, that time is of the essence in the sense that, we need a plan that's going to figure it out, or we're going to have to make kind of that, I'm not one to give up, but I do value what you're saying. And I think parents value that as well. And I heard kind of the high school students that are there with you allude to that fact as well, is that where time is of the essence, I guess is how I would phrase it right now.
So when's that time? I'm asking for some definites here. So I don't know if it's a Patrick question or your question.
I don't know if I have a definite here because it's just like last year when we had the pandemic, when, we finally had to say we're done for the year, but we wanted to keep that sense of hope. I think end of April, 1st of May.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
So by the time they come back from April break.
Or I guess I would say 1st of May, because then that gives us only 6 weeks left. You got May and you got June, a couple weeks in June.
Okay, so there will be a time when we can finally say to everyone, this is it for the rest of the year. And then this is what we're gonna do, and we'll try to do as best we can, but just so there's a little less, we keep planning, and a little less, I hope we can, and I think we need that definite. And then my last question would be, because the question came from a parent, Jason, today, was that what's the plan for next year? So I guess my asking for a definite plan for this year precludes that question of, when can we tell our parents one way or another, or close enough to say, when does that happen so parents can make decisions either to stay with us, stay with hybrid, stay with what our plan is, or, make a decision for their lives, because they can't wait always until 2 days before school next year.
No, I think for next year, I know Steve asked this question earlier, Stephen Griffey, is, we're already starting to look at 2 plans simultaneously. I mean, obviously the easy one is if we get direction from the state that we don't have to do 3 feet of distancing, and we're right back to where we were. We're advertising for positions this week of retirees and positions that we know we have to fill for next year. At the same time, if we have, we have to go by 3 feet, which we have to, until we get further notice, we have to do this simultaneously. So, looking at retaining the 1-year positions that we have in this year's budget because of COVID is trying to, keep them on to be able to help us hire more this spring and this summer, which is, taking a chance sometimes, and it's about timing. But you have a lot more people, especially college graduates and other people that are willing to make a change and look for jobs in this, in the spring and also through the summer months. So that ESSER 2 money that we have, the 1.7, 1.8 million, that we submitted our application, but we haven't spent any of that money. And that is kind of that's our backup plan, so to speak, if we need to hire this staff. So like take this middle school example, we need staff to make this happen. Again, we're looking for staff in March, which isn't very productive. But when we look for staff in June, July, August, it should be much more productive. The distance learning staff that Katie talked about earlier, the hope is that maybe the numbers there, the percentages would reduce, especially if people are feeling better about that. So could we take some of those staff? We've talked about that, take them off the distance learning roster and employ them in person so that, again, we can offer 100% in person at the middle school and possibly at the high school level. How we are doing instruction, asynchronously versus synchronously. At some point, need to have that. And then busing. Busing is, a neighboring district just kind of had a conversation about they want students back. But busing sometimes, we're going to have a new busing contract, and we've already started thinking about that. But having 2 bus runs at the elementary level, again, are the busing. We've got to have 2 plans for that too, but will that change? Because that makes a big difference. Half days for next year at the middle school, high school, every single day. That's another conversation. So we are starting to already have these discussions and kind of developing 2 plans simultaneously to start next year with 100%, whichever way we need to go.
So basically the limits that, again, my understanding is that we've got a staffing limit, and if we have to space the kids, we have a physical plant spacing issues that continue to go on to say, if we have to accommodate those 2 things, those are restricting us from being able to go back in full-time in Woolwich Middle School, for example.
Well,
It's nice to know that there's some
yeah, I don't think the parameters of this discussion change much going forward. We're faced with limitations, staff, as you said, staff.
I'm trying to clarify though, that's why I'm saying those again, to clarify.
And barring, any change, as Patrick alluded to, if we're still, and I don't think we can know those things at this point for sure, but if we're still limited by those space restrictions and difficulty finding staff, a lot of that is going to influence what our program looks like next year. Everyone hopes.
That's what I said, yeah. That's what I just said.
Yeah. None of this will be a factor, but that's not likely to be the case.
So Patrick, is there a benchmark where you think you'll be able to start being able to make those decisions about next year?
We've been asking over and over from the state, when, by the end of May, 1st of June, before, people, some staff leave for the summer, can we have a decision? And again, I know it may be impossible, but just a decision one way or the other, kind of like what you're, saying to me, but a decision one way or the other. Is it going to be 3 feet distance? That report that came out last week, that was for most other states. Maine, we've been living by the 3 feet distance since day one, really, for among students. But if that's going to stay, it would just, if we know that, then we can start hiring the staff at a time where there's staff out there looking for jobs. Or if they can tell us that it's not going to be required, and we can move forward.
So there's really no way, then what I'm hearing you say, there's no way of saying, regardless of what we're being told, we're going to make a decision by July 1st. If we don't hear, if there's a way for us to say, we don't hear by July 1st, things have changed or not, if the state doesn't know, we're going to go with hybrid, and we're going to make hybrid work. I don't want to push you, but I'm just saying, if there's a way to
Our goal is
Give
to, our
everybody
goal is
a-
to be back 100%, pre-K to 12. I'm not gonna, I can't sit here tonight and give a date. I mean, we're gonna work as hard as we can, as early as we can to try to make this, a reality. And again, we're trying to push for some more guidance on the 3 feet. That's the only thing. I think these are gonna stay. I mean, the hand wash, all the other
Right.
requirements are gonna be there. And it's just about the social distancing because of busing and because of space in the classrooms.
And busing's a good point too. So it's really, it's busing, classrooms, physical plant, the busing, and the staff. Are those the things? Okay, just to kind of, good for the
Yeah,
people listening.
I would also add, if I could chime in, this is Katie, that it's good for us to have a lot of options that are fully planned out, but I would worry about getting too far down a road and setting a deadline, just because when the state carries out or shares with us their new plan, we have to follow it whether they tell us on April 15th or June 15th. And so it almost doesn't matter what deadline we give ourselves, because when their information comes out, that's what we're required to do. So we need to be prepared for everything and then go with what the best option is once they tell us. But I don't think we can give ourselves a deadline because we're bound to the guidelines that they set.
Yeah, I think as a board and as a district, our communication has been about as clear as we've been able to be with our community. There still is a great deal unknown. We're planning. We're trying to plan, as Patrick indicates, we're trying to plan into a future that we can't really describe at this point in terms of what those factors will be. The state, has shown that it can turn on a dime in terms of varying requirements and regulations as they apply to the district. We will, certainly be as quick to make relevant decisions that as they affect the next school year, and we'll communicate those as clearly and as quickly as we can. But folks, I think, have to understand up to this as we progress through this entire year. There just is still a great deal unknown and a great deal that changes on a weekly and monthly basis. We're actively looking for staff at this point. It's a good point. It is a good point. At some point on the calendar, it just doesn't make sense to try to introduce dramatic changes into the schedule. Patrick said maybe that date is the 1st of May, when we have to back down a little bit from pushing 100% if we're unable to meet our staffing and spacing goals. But we're going to be faced with that uncertainty going forward as far as the next school year goes. I think it's just something that we have to anticipate, something that we have to work with as best as possible.
I have a question.
Sure, Lauren.
And this could be a Patrick or Deb. So one of the things that we all saw, I think actually, the letter from the Maine School Board Association a week or two ago, that I took it as more you better comply or else, in the sense of if schools don't, in their quest to get back 100%, if they don't comply completely, they could lose funding. Patrick, do you or Deb know a little bit more? I don't even really know kind of what's provoked it, but it was more like because I always thought the guidelines were somewhat, these are our recommendations. Like you can stay open, if you can stay open 100% if you go to yellow, but our recommendation is that you don't. But is it different now that if you make a unilateral local decision to stay open, you lose your funding? Do you know that at all?
No, I don't. I have not heard. I mean, there was some chatter about that, but it was nothing that, I mean, I think schools in general are doing their best to get as many students back as they can.
Right.
And that's, and that, you know, the state is understanding of that. So I can look into that more, but I have not spent a lot of time on that.
And I know we have Brandon and others to go, but it just, since we're on the topic of deadlines and, you know, I guess as a parent, and 4 of us on the board are parents, 3 or 4, I lost track. You know, you hear that and you say, I can respect that, but then you say, I can't imagine a world where all of the adult population is vaccinated that want to be, except for our children, and they won't go back. So I can't imagine what that day will look like if we, as a parent, I might be on the other side saying, banging on the door saying we need to go back. So I totally understand there's nothing that we can do today to change these 11 pages of guidelines, even though they're called 6 framework, 6 steps. It's multiple pages of guidelines that we are beholden to, and we can't change it. But I also wonder at what point, I mean, you see what Jenny's saying, at what point do we say, you know what, darn it, we're just enough, you know? It's just a comment. But my main question was, do you know of any, if we do decide, hey, look, we're just going 100% in September, if we lose funding? That was my first question.
I don't believe that, but I will double check that.
No, but if you heard that there was, I know in the news, there were some superintendents around the state who were like, you know, we're gonna do what we have to do. So I'm guessing someone probably reacted to that, if that's the kind of language you were hearing. You know, there were others I had seen in the news, so who knows? But yeah, I think things are gonna change very rapidly this spring. They keep moving stuff up, so we'll see.
Yeah, let's finish up with Jason. Any specific questions on Woolwich? If not, we're gonna move on. We can always come back to some of the more general comments.
I have some comments and questions, but I'd like to wait until everyone else has gone.
Okay, thanks. Okay, nothing specifically for Jason. He'll stay on, obviously.
Yep, I'll be right here.
Brandon, you
Brandon,
wanna go
you're there?
next?
Yeah, I'm here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm going to have some great news. As Patrick noted earlier, and similar to Jason and Woolwich, you know, we've worked to increase student access on Wednesdays and our extracurricular opportunities. So, you know, we've doubled the number of kids we're bringing in. We're up around 100 kids now coming in on Wednesdays. So just under a third of our student body. You know, we did intramural floor hockey this spring, as always, a huge hit. We had fewer students than normal participating, but I think in total we still had somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 to 70 kids that played. We started some after-school homework supports, and we're continuing all of our extracurricular activities. And you know, we are looking forward to being able to offer a spring sports season that will also include playing games and not just skill and drill practices. So that's good news. But the best news is, and I'll give you the short version and then some of the details. BMS is able to return all 6th and 7th grade students to full in-person instruction beginning April 5th. If the board wants me to move forward with this. This would be 5 days a week. It would continue our current daily schedule of a 7:30 start and a 1:10 dismissal. Wednesdays would be fully in person for grades 6 and 7. It would also be a late start, so a start time of about 8:30. Our 6th and 7th graders that are currently enrolled in the fully distance learning program would remain in that fully distance learning program. We're not yet able to fully return our 8th grade students, but we are hopeful and believe that we will be able to do that shortly after 6th and 7th graders are able to return. So the longer version of this is that, you know, after the 22nd of February, the board meeting, I shared that we were in need of about 5 to 6 staff members to fulfill one existing opening, and then also the new positions we would need to meet the safety guidelines that the CDC and the state have put forward. Since that time, we have hired 3 new staff for the remainder of the school year. Their first available start dates are why we've kind of pegged April 5th as the first day that we could bring back 6th and 7th grade. We've had 3 BMS staff members that are having their teaching caseloads changed, another 3 staff members that are adding additional classes for instruction to their daily schedules. 4 of our staff are changing their classroom locations in order to accommodate new class caseloads. We've had to make some pretty significant changes to some daily schedules for teachers and students in both of those grade levels, including a small group of sixth graders that will need to change which house and teachers they're working with. But we think with these changes, both of my grade levels feel very confident in making a return full time. Specific to eighth grade, they are our largest grade level. They have approximately 20 more students than our seventh grade. So the changes that we made in seventh grade, the scheduling tweaks, won't work for eighth grade. So that's why we're kind of still in need of a staff member there. And we are working on a plan that won't require adding any additional staff. But there's still some logistics to work out there. So that's why eighth grade isn't quite ready yet. But we do hope we'll be able to do it soon. I will, of course, keep you guys all updated on that. So, we're confident in our ability to do this safely, returning sixth and seventh graders, meeting all of the CDC and state requirements. One area that we will want to continue to monitor, and Patrick also has kind of noted this, is transportation. With the kids who are currently using the buses as part of our hybrid model, we can combine those kids for sixth and seventh grade, and there is still plenty of room on the buses to get them all in without having to add buses or any additional runs. However, if we were to have kind of an influx of families that wanted to join the bus routes as part of a full return, that could lead to numbers getting high on a couple of the buses, and so we just kind of have to keep an eye on it. But as is, busing shouldn't be a problem for our sixth and seventh grade to come back full time. Other than that, I think we've got all the logistics and safety guidelines covered, and we'd be ready to go for sixth and seventh grade beginning April 5th. So at this point, I guess I'm just looking for the board to give me the thumbs up, and I can start sharing the information officially. I know that some word may have leaked out to some families, as our kids and teachers have been pretty excited about this as we started planning. So officially, I can start letting families know as early as tomorrow, if you guys give me the go-ahead. And so that's it. I think it's great news, and I'm happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Okay, that is exciting news. Yep, thanks, Brandon. Any questions of Brandon?
I have a quick one.
Sure.
I might have more after as Jamie, but this is pertaining to BMS. Brandon, would you remind me or us on lunch? How are you handling that?
Sure. So with our lunches, with the addition of the new staff members and the extra teaching spaces, we're just going to further spread kids out in order to meet that 6-foot requirement. Right now, we can get about 11 kids, up to 12 kids in one classroom following the 6 feet, all facing the same direction. We can continue to do that by adding, like I said, I think it's 3 classrooms at the 6th grade level. At the 7th grade level, it's similar. At 7th grade, we didn't have to create new classroom spaces because we had a couple of teachers that are teaching as part of the fully distance learning program. So we'll spread out into their classrooms. And then if necessary, and I don't think it will be necessary, but if it were to be necessary, we can also have students sit in the hallway spaced out 6 feet apart, all facing one direction. And we could rotate kids, so not, or ask for volunteers. So we're not making kids sit in the hallway to eat their lunch. But with the extra teaching spaces and the additional staff we're bringing in, we can make the lunches work safely.
I appreciate that. I feel like that gets so left out of the conversation nationally and even statewide. We'll do a round of applause for 3 feet, but no one's really putting it out there publicly that it's still 6 feet at lunch and meals.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, as the weather gets warmer, being able to utilize our outside spaces again will make a huge difference. And so that's another thing that we have in our favor as the weather warms up this spring.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Any other questions for Brandon at this point? Okay, thanks, Brandon. So we have not marked this as an action item. I mean, legally, we don't have to take a vote on this. We have, I think, a sense of the board that we've been continuously working to return kids to class. And in a sense, this is a step in that direction. It does relate to that middle school. I think the thing that I'm not troubled by what Brandon has offered as the possibility of bringing back middle school kids back. It's the lack of, and it's not by purpose, obviously, but we just don't have a real sense of how the Woolwich situation is going to resolve itself, through the rest of the year. I mean, from what Jason has indicated, we're trying to get those kids back as much as possible, and maybe, if I understood Jason correctly, there is an opportunity perhaps to add a regular third day to that middle school schedule. We're still working on it, but we have proceeded on a stepwise fashion with our elementary schools as well, in terms of authorizing those principals to proceed, bring kids back as their building was ready, even though some of the other elementary schools weren't ready in the same time frame as the other. So we're kind of faced with the same situation here. It does seem that the middle school is ready to get 6th and 7th graders back, with the possibility of 8th graders coming back at some point later in April. I just want to get a sense of the board if we feel we should just proceed. I mean, my opinion is that this is the direction we've been heading all along. And it's something that we should ask Brandon to move forward with. It's my sense.
Was Jamie gonna ask some questions? Jamie, did you have questions you wanted to ask?
Well, I do have some questions, but I'd like to let Eric go next so that I know sort of a fuller picture of RSU1. I am fully supportive of Bath Middle School students returning, any student returning as soon as possible.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm all for Bath Middle School to continue like the other schools have and open on April 5th for those students who can.
Okay.
I guess I'd just like to have it clarified, because I'll get asked immediately after this meeting, if Bath Middle School can go back, why can't Woolwich? Is just typically the question from parents and folks. So I guess what I'm hearing, I just want to make sure I'm correct in this, is the reason that Bath Middle School can go back and Woolwich can't in the same degree is because Bath Middle School was able to hire and find additional staff, and 2, Bath Middle School has a physical plant that offers more space to spread the kids out. Is that, and they can handle busing. So they were able to do those 3.
Yeah, I mean, we can handle busing at Woolwich, it's not a problem. It's staffing. I mean, and a person applied to be that 6th grade teacher at BMS. That's where they applied.
Yeah.
And so, and they were willing to leave another school district and take a chance. And so, they're coming here. That's April 5th is when they could start, and then able to find a support staff person as well. So that's it's about finding staff. That's really the difference.
There is enough space at Woolwich to handle everybody. Because that's not what I understood. I understood there was
Yeah, it's gonna be challenging, but there is space. Jason, I don't want to talk for you, but I mean, it's really staffing is the biggest issue.
Yeah, I mean, if there would be anything we do spacing wise is going to displace a smaller group of people, but there would be ways to look at trying to get kids back. I mean, that's our ultimate goal. So it wouldn't be ideal. It would be tight, but we can't even really be. Staffing is a number one priority, no matter what structure I look at, and bringing kids back.
So to clarify, it's just the only limitation to bring students back at Woolwich Middle School full time is a shortage of staffing. Is that something that the other barriers wouldn't prevent students from coming back? It's just staffing. Is that correct? Just so I understand. Just staffing, Jason?
The staffing has to change before any other option can be put in place. Yes.
That's not what I'm at. It's staffing, right? I mean, I want to get a kind of a clear yes or no. We're not a conditional da-da-da-da. If you find staffing, what I'm hearing is that Woolwich Middle School students could come back full-time in person? Yes? Is that, I'm looking for a yes or no, if that's
Yes.
appropriate.
Yes.
Okay, good, great, thanks,
He said yes.
thanks.
The other barriers that the school, that Woolwich is facing are manageable if staff can be a difference.
Thanks.
So does that mean there's a consensus that Falcon can go
It seems to
forward?
me that there is. I mean, I don't, again, we didn't mark this as an action item, but.
We didn't because we didn't know. I mean, honestly, we didn't know, where we were gonna be.
But I think the board has formally, moved parts of our agenda that make it very clear that returning kids full-time is really our objective.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity here, so. Yep, Lorna?
Why, so we voted on other significant decisions. And I guess I'm still not, just for clarity on, now we're kind of reaching consensus and not needing to vote. Is there a reason why we can't vote now that we know and
Well,
have
we
the
could,
information?
it's perfectly fine with me to vote. We did not mark this as an action item
Right.
on the agenda, so that's my only hesitation.
Gotcha.
If you
You
want.
mean for the notice?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We didn't give notice on it, but there's no
Yeah.
legal
Yeah,
requirement.
you don't have to. if it
I don't need
comes
to
up like
complicate it.
did.
I wasn't understanding, so because of the notice, the public notice was not an action item. I hear you.
There's no requirement that we take a formal vote.
Okay.
If the board would be more comfortable taking a formal vote, then I would, call an emergency meeting, and we would just meet remotely, to record that vote.
Okay.
And I think the board has been very clear in its intent, over the last several meetings, really, to get kids back. There is an opportunity here. There is a time pressure here, as Brandon alluded to. I mean, we have a teacher who is available April 5th, and if for some reason we're not going to move forward, we do need to, make that clear. But so I would just suggest we just give Brandon a verbal okay. And then
Because this
forward.
is,
Jennifer?
Would it delay anything if we gave a public notice on Tuesday and voted on a Wednesday or something? Like a special, I'm like, would it?
I don't, what is the notice requirement? Do you
I
know?
mean, it's fine. We can do it. I just don't, I mean, we didn't do it. We're not bringing back all of BMS. They're in a hybrid. We didn't do the BRCTC a couple of weeks or last month. Again, because I don't know, maybe it was because I felt like the board was, the whole aim was
Yeah.
to bring students back, and we're not.
Yeah.
The other elementary schools, it was, this is a new year to us, and so we took each elementary school because we were going from hybrid to 100%. We'd like to move with this, and I don't know from the board's perspective if you feel like calling a special meeting is gonna change your mind or make a difference. I think the parents that, you typically hear from want these students, that you hear from, they want these students back, so.
I was just asking from a public stand. I feel comfortable with the decision now. I just was wanting that, I know that we had an issue about voting on things that weren't already on the agenda as an action item before. And so I was just trying to give it a one-day thing just to kind of meet that requirement and then not delay anything too much, but I mean, if you feel that there's not gonna be any kind of public problem with this, because, whatever it is, I'm happy to vote tonight.
Well, I'm not saying we're going to vote. We're not taking a vote. We have, there's no requirement that we vote on this. As there was no specific requirement that we vote on those individual schools that in fact we did record a vote on. But if it's the sense of the board, and again, the point is that I think we've made the public very clear. It's been very clear to the public, I think, that this board has been moving toward opening schools 100%. And this is just one step in that process. And so I would think that we can, provide Brandon with whatever direction or guidance that he's asking, that he do, and Patrick, that they do go forward and pull the trigger on this. And move forward. But, yeah.
I understand. I understand the agenda and so I'm good. I understand now why it's different, so I'm good.
Oh, yeah, I got Eric
Okay,
next.
Eric?
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Well, no, I just want, so the end result is yes, we're going for April 5th. Okay, thank you.
Eric, we can hear you.
Great, thanks. I'll jump in with an update on Morse, where we are now, and where we'd like to go. So starting off, we have had some success in having our clubs back, adding new clubs, as well as athletics. And I won't talk too much about athletics because Nate's on here as well. But I think just similar theme as what you've been talking about with other schools, staffing, classroom space, and buses are our limitations that we're going up against. Last month, I laid out what I thought was the best plan for the high school in terms of opening up a distance learning hub. I did advertise. We needed about 5 or so sort of ed tech type positions to go with this preferred method of bringing more students back and adding extra opportunities. I wish I had the good news that Bath Middle School has. I have not had many applicants at all for those positions, and certainly nothing adequate to move forward with that plan. So that's disappointing, and we're running up against, in that instance, it is that staffing issue and getting qualified staff to move forward with that plan. So I think, in terms of timing and when to pull the plug on something, I think that it seems apparent to me that plan is not going to work. We're not going to be able to find the staffing to open up a distance learning hub. And it's time to explore some other options. These options, I laid them out last month in terms of having greater impact on the school, staff, on teaching, and so on and so forth, that we could start exploring at this point. We also could, I'd throw it out there, we could consider doing a much smaller scale of a distance learning hub, where we would just sort of handpick some students who aren't accessing us 4 days a week now. So in other words, they're not part of our special programming, to come in. That's one option, and try to use existing staff, or maybe make a hire that could help us with that. That would be the least impactful to what we have going on, and other options would be looking at possibly trying to bring back a single class, and utilizing the space to do that. Now, that would any option from here on out that I'm discussing would have these impacts on the rest of the school. We don't have a house type of system, like a 6th or 7th grade. Our teachers, for the most part, teach across all grade levels, and classes generally have students from all different classes, grade levels in them. That's not universally true, but that's fairly true. So if we change the model and had some students in school, then we could no longer continue with an asynchronous model, which most of our teachers are doing now. We do have a handful of teachers doing a synchronous model. So in other words, they have a fresh lesson that they're teaching every day, and you're either receiving that lesson via Google Meets, or you're receiving that lesson in person. We purposefully didn't go with that as a sort of mandated across the board, I think for good reasons. I think all of the school, if not a lot of the school, would need to move more in that direction if we tried to do something like bringing back a single class. And there'd be some other impacts as well. I'll kind of give you the bird's eye view to start off with. Now, in that, it would, if we brought back a class, I'll kind of spare you all the details, but you know, I think from an educational standpoint, you know, probably most people would say grade 9 would make the most amount of sense. I will tell you that that's the most difficult to get back. In terms of, you know, now when we're talking about limitations, as I said, classroom space is that other limitation. And we can't physically fit the students into the classrooms. So obviously it's a little bit easier if we're just talking about one class, but there's still classes that won't be able to fit. We have 4 periods a day right now with our schedule we're running. So that would vary with 9th grade. It would vary somewhere between 9 classes at the most that wouldn't be able to fit into their classroom, to 7 or 4, depending on the classes. So we'd have to look at you know, doing a bit different, moving them to say gyms, gymnasiums, and doing that outside of the classroom areas. Obviously, you know, if you can picture if you're running a science class or an art class, that has some impacts educationally if you're doing it in a gymnasium or an auditorium or whatnot. And down to the lowest grade, lowest impact for the grades would actually be grade 11. Would range between 5 or 6 classes per period would not be able to fit into their classrooms. And so we would have to look for that number of alternative spaces. So I'll open it up to questions now, but you know, those are basically the directions that I can see moving forward. And then busing would be the other thing we have to consider now that you know, the breaking news here that Bath Middle School would be back on the buses as well. There'd be some things to consider there. The other option to do is to explore who would be interested in returning full time. And again, all those impacts that I just explained would apply here. But if we looked at those students who would really want to, and families who would really want to return full time, if we could narrow down and find a schedule that would work space wise, all of which knowing that it would have impacts on everybody in the school if we chose to go in one of those directions. So I'll stop there for now and open it up for questions.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest we just take a vote now before we have questions for Jason, and we still have.
I thought we weren't voting.
No.
Time. For time. And we still have back tech to talk about too, the RTC. So could I have a motion that we extend our meeting beyond 8 o'clock?
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting beyond 8.
Okay, we have a motion from Lorna, second by Bill. All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Jamie, I'm assuming you're in favor.
Yes.
Okay, okay, any questions for Eric? Lorna?
I have a question, Mr. Varney. Before you even mentioned it, I was going to ask if there had been a survey of students and parents because it's been a while and things have changed and everyone's in their momentum. And so I was just curious. So I was glad to hear you say that because that was one of my questions.
Yeah, there has not for some time. So, if this was a direction that we were entertaining, I think that that would be one direction that we could go. The other one, making the decision of, well, we'll really try to get X grade level back. But it might be time to see what the interest actually would be of coming back versus working in the system that we have now. I would certainly say there are arguments in both directions. We have a system moving forward. I wouldn't want to change things that are, at the high school where we have, as Tanner alluded, we have students at the precipice of graduation here and working and making progress towards these goals. And I wouldn't want to do something that is so significant of a change that it throws some students off on a groove that they have, meeting their academic goals. So, I think that I would suspect that the sentiment would not be universal in one direction or the other, but I certainly could be wrong.
Thank you.
Yeah, Johnny?
Hi, Mr. Barney, this is Jonah. If it were possible to bring a single grade back into the school, what would the impact look like on the others?
On the other grades?
Yes.
Yeah, so you could imagine that if you have a class that's mixed, I know you have some that, and let's say, I don't know if your class comes back, grade 11, and so you would be there every day, and so now the 12th graders that are only there half of the time, they would have to adjust on those classes probably to be a synchronous thing. So they'd probably have to tune in during class time and adjust their schedule to do a Google Meets and to get that instruction, because otherwise, the teacher would have to prepare a fresh lesson every day because you're there every day. So you're not gonna listen to the same one twice. So it would change things for you for sure, but it might change it for that 12th grader. Maybe Tanner sitting next to you in that class would have to log in on his distance days and get that fresh class.
Thanks.
Jamie, did you have questions?
Yes, and I'm trying to figure out who to address this to, maybe Katie. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for all of the work that they're doing, trying to figure out how to make this work and bring everyone back full time, because I can only imagine it's not very easy. But I'm wondering how we can provide an option for the students who truly, truly are desperate to be back full time. I hear from parents over and over and over how desperate they are to have their students back full time, including a parent who reached out a number of times leading up to this meeting to share her concern. And for as many kids and parents who are going to be really excited to learn about Bath Middle School 6th and 7th grade, there's going to be just as many who are devastated because their student is not getting the same opportunity. So I'm wondering if staffing is what is holding us back. We have the idea of the distance learning hub. Would it be possible to provide an opportunity as a distance learning hub, staffing it with people from the community that we know are trusted, caring adults who could help students log into their classes, help as much as they can with homework, and just provide an option for the people that are wanting to go back full time. My other concern always is mental health of students. And one of the things that was most alarming, I think, for me to learn a few years ago is that spring and early summer are our highest risk times for youth suicide. And so not allowing students or not having a way for students to be in person and potentially be noticed by a caring adult or a peer, weighs on me heavily. And I wonder, are we exploring and being creative enough for the staffing piece, knowing that a caring adult can't lead a class or teach new content, but can they support the distance learning teachers and the distance learning that's already happening, and making it an option for people that are desperate to be back more than just 2 or 3 days a week.
Thanks, Jamie. Is there anyone who wants to, when I say anyone, Patrick or any of the administrators who want to speak to that? I mean, one thing that I wonder is, and this specifically for Eric's, I guess primarily for Eric at this point. I mean, you had your proposal for the distance learning hub, which you indicate would take about five new hires to get off the ground. But is there something less intensive that might take fewer staff, but that would bring kids into the school in some sort of a structured learning and environment, but that also offers that social interaction and again, perhaps in some way, what Jamie's talking about, an opportunity for staff to put eyes on students, to look for mental health issues that might be out there. And I was kind of thinking of, something along the line of the structured study hall
Supervised study hall.
that we had JP, your predecessor had brought into the high school. I mean, does any of that make it, we're not going to get to the 5. We understand, Eric, but can we do something with 2 if we were able to find 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would scale it, to what we could find. In that scenario, a small version like that, we would probably keep it in the school. If that was the direction we would go, we would use one of those larger spaces. So that might fly in the face of looking down the direction of bringing a single class back. But I think that that's a possibility of trying to, bring 1 or 2 people on. At that point, it would probably be us choosing, obviously due to the scenario that the student is in and their success academically, but kind of choosing the few students who could participate in it with a smaller group rather than the vision originally where we see who wants to participate. It would be a little bit more of us reaching out, similar to the way we have it for the students who are able to go 4 or 5 days. We'd have to fit, you're just asking the question now, so I don't know what we would make that decision based, like the parameters that would be around, but I think that it would be best that we make that decision if we were going to go down that smaller route.
And Jamie, just to kind of address your question a little bit, very good question. We have reached out to 2 or 3 different local organizations to try to see if they have people that, would be willing to work with students, supervise. It doesn't have to be, a person in education. And we've had a couple leads, but they've fallen through. We had a lead this weekend that just the person couldn't pull it off. So we certainly, you and I and Katie can talk if you have any connections, but it certainly would be an opportunity to bring back probably maybe a small group of students that really could benefit from being in school, 5 days a week.
Thank you. And could it be something that for middle school students at Woolwich, BMS, and Morse, could it be that range of students?
I think it could. I think it could be structured in a way. I mean, Jason and I have had conversations about, depending on what we get for applicants and what we can see, who we can find out there. So I do think it could be structured if we had the right, the right people, maybe the right number of people, and then where how many students would benefit from this.
I think one thing that we do have to think about in that when we're looking at more of sort of community members is, with employees, we have a commitment from them that they're gonna come the next day, and because we have students coming the next day, right? And so it's challenging with a volunteer situation to have them volunteer at that level where they're coming, even if it's 2 days a week, we're counting on them.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree and have had that same experience. I would envision RSU1 hiring people for this short term that would have the flexibility to be able to do so.
That was going to basically be my comment, is that they would need to be hired, committed, background checked individuals.
Yes.
Because that's what we have to do to protect our children. So although there are a lot of people out in the community who say I'll volunteer, but they would need to be, it would need to be an employment situation where they'd be able to commit to that.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we try to send a message that we're flexible about somebody's background. It may not be in education, but is somebody that could be a caring adult for students. But yeah, we would want to follow our typical protocol.
What I'm hearing from the conversation though is if it were something that we explored, like Jamie suggested, is that I know before we were at the beginning, we were like no volunteers, but it sounds like now we'd be willing to be flexible as long as we did, and we have to by law, the background checks and fingerprinting, but it does sound like maybe that's one area of the guidelines where we could, if we decided to have a little flexibility. That's what it sounds like.
I think we have flexibility in their qualifications. I mean, we're not opposed to, it doesn't have to be a volunteer. I think we would be, we want to compensate people for coming in. So I think we've tried to, we reached out to like three local organizations that we knew don't have, necessarily a typical educational background, just to see if they had anybody. So again, we're open to being flexible.
Yeah.
Working, certainly working with volunteers too. I mean, there's an administrative component to this. I mean, in terms of organizing and bringing those folks to bear. So, Jennifer?
I'm a little confused though, because if we were talking about these hubs available to Morse, BMS, and Woolwich, that means that these hubs would be the students coming in to them. So are we talking about building in a bus crisis here? I mean, I can hear that we can handle a few more kids here or a few more kids there, but if we were to do this hub across all those 3 schools, could we actually bus them? I mean, because I know the staff to teach is a question, but also the bus to get them there is a question. So
I think right now we would be looking at more of a hub at the high school level and at Woolwich. So 2 different kind of buses you're talking about, fleet of buses.
Okay.
So that shouldn't be an issue. I mean,
okay.
We're BMS will move it forward where hopefully we won't need that approach because kids will be there.
Except for the 8th grade.
No, yeah, I mean, but if we can figure out some of these logistical items and we know we're going to bring 8th grade back in, I don't know, not too long after in April than the 6th and 7th graders, then we wouldn't have to worry about that piece. I think where it's really, concerning with buses is, if you bring the whole Morse High School back and the whole 6, 7, and 8 of BMS with you can only have 1 per seat.
Yeah.
And it's family members sitting together, that's it. That's where there's but that again, busing is not what's holding us back, it's staffing. Any other questions you have for Eric?
We still have Julie out there, right, Julie?
So Julie's next.
You do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So we came back for 4 days a week starting on March 15th. So last week was our first full week. we've had a lot of interruptions because we've had PD days for Booth Bay 2 days last week, or for Wiscasset, maybe one Wiscasset this week. And then we have more parent teachers conferences coming up, which impacts our schedule. So we haven't really seen a full week with everybody here yet, but most of the feedback has been fairly positive for students. I will say that there were certainly students who were not happy for the change. The seniors mostly a few seniors here and there in programs that have gotten used to working longer hours, getting ready for life after graduation, and they had to totally uproot their schedule. But they're coming and they're here, and we're happy to be offering them more hands-on training so we can get them ready for their certifications. Our teachers, I think they're finding that it's good to have the students back in the building. We did have to make some changes once we got after the first day or two on how instruction would work, because I think I mentioned that our classrooms and many of the spaces aren't large enough for all the students. So cohort A might be doing a lesson in the classroom while cohort B gets started in the shop. Just to start off class, they're not doing as much instruction as they normally would, some of them. And then we've had to utilize some other spaces in the building. If somebody has longer instruction to do that, they really need both of their class, their whole entire class present. But we're making it work, and I think it'll give us the opportunity to get a lot more covered. And I really haven't heard much from anybody. I walk around every day and people are doing what they do, and I haven't heard anything otherwise.
That's good. That's good. Thanks, Julie. Any questions of Julie? No? Okay. Thanks, Julie. Thank you. Okay, so those are the four presentations. Any lingering questions, issues? I think we have a fairly clear and cleaner idea of Bath Middle School at this point. You know, we're looking at returning 6th and 7th graders by April 5th, and then perhaps 8th graders within a couple of weeks after that. As far as Woolwich goes, and Jason, we're still looking for staff that would enable us to return some of those, if not all, at least one of those grades as quickly as possible. But the focus there, at least in the short term, seems to be to increase the number of days that even within the hybrid model, the number of days that kids are actually in school. And Eric, I think, seemed to be the most, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Eric, obviously, but seemed to be perhaps the most resigned that we're not going to get those kids back on a full-time, all those kids back in class on a full-time basis in the high school, but there might be some models that we'll continue to work on that would enable us to return some kids in a hub, in a learning hub type of situation. So.
Well, I would say if the 3-foot distancing in classrooms is changed, then we could, but I don't see a path forward with everybody 4 or 5 days a week at this time with that in place.
Right. Yep. Jennifer.
I'm really interested in this distance hub solution for Woolwich, if that's an opportunity. And I haven't heard much from Jason about that option. He's talked about trying to get, he's been focused on other options. So I just would like to know if there is a plan on how that would be possibly implemented in Woolwich. Not a bringing the students back in full-time with an education instruction, but if we could get a hub environment going on with someone not necessarily.
I can respond very quickly to that, Jen. As Pat alluded to, I mean, as we've made our way along and realizing the difficulty, curriculum and content wise in teaching our students in the 5 days a week, if we're not able to find all the staff, this kind of is an option that has started to arise as of, just the end of last week, of how we might be able to, use our space. We would still need some staff, but maybe not necessarily the same qualifications or as many to try to create that distance hub option. So it is something we'll be continuing to brainstorm and plan this week and see how close we can get to making something like that happen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Any other comments? I think the board, the message, at least as far as I can articulate it, is the board remains committed to getting our kids back in class as quickly, as safely possible. It was always going to be an incremental process and a stepwise process, and we see that continuing, and we'll continue this effort until you reach that point when we just run out of time, wherever that time is. We're not willing to put a date certain out there yet, but we will continue to work to look for options to get kids back in class on a full-time basis. Okay, thanks to the board, thanks to all the administrators. Anybody have any other comments they want at this point? No, I know it's not a discussion that leaves anybody with a blueprint to go forward with, and it doesn't leave everyone with a settled feeling, but that's kind of the hand that we're dealt at this point. So item 12.3 is the spring athletic sports update. Nate, are you there?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, Nate's going to just provide you with a brief overview because the NPA put out their guidelines, and he's not going to go through every single sport tonight, but he's just going to give you I've asked him to talk about mask wearing, I've asked him to talk about fans and any specific things. And again, this is, in the spring, in the fall and in the winter, you guys approved the playing of extracurricular sports activities. So to be consistent, we knew this was coming, so we put it as an action item for you guys. Today, we started with pitchers and catchers. I think that's the only group that started today. But Nate can just give you a quick overview of the NPA guidelines, which you've probably seen on the news. It's been out there a lot recently. So Nate, thank you.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So as Patrick said last week, the NPA released the return to play guidelines for all spring sports. Outdoor track was listed as lower risk, tennis is lower risk, baseball, softball, and lacrosse is moderate risk. Like Patrick said, I'm not going to go too far into the weeds with this, but I do want to just kind of briefly touch on some of the expectations that the state and the NPA have for us. So masks, that remains consistent. All athletes, coaches, and officials, regardless of the sport, are to wear masks at all times. Benches, they need to be spaced out 6 feet apart. So much like what we did with basketball this winter, we need to continue to do that throughout the spring. They have allowed baseball and softball benches to be extended down the foul poles. We have fences at both of our fields where we can safely do that. Sanitization, nothing has really changed here either. Shared equipment needs to be sanitized frequently. So that goes for any outdoor track equipment, baseballs, softballs, helmets, bats, all of that equipment. And scheduling, this has changed a little bit. So unlike the fall and winter, the state has allowed for a cross-state competition, which includes a postseason and championships. So for the fall and the winter, we were really limited to the regionalization of our schedules where we could only play adjacent counties, but that has changed. That has opened up a little bit so we can play counties, schools within counties that are not necessarily adjacent to Saginaw. And then there'll be a change in spectators too. So as you recall, there was a very limited number of spectators we could have for the fall season. with a maximum of 100 people at the facility. There were no spectators allowed for the winter season, but spectators are being allowed for the spring season. And now for outdoor facilities, based on the governor's executive order, effective March 26th through May 23rd, 75% of occupancy is allowed. Then May 24th thereafter, 100% of occupancy is allowed. So I did have a question about that. So I reached out to Steve Balboni at the Bath Rec and asked, what his opinion was on that, or what exactly might that mean. So he talked with folks at the city and came back and said there really isn't a permitted capacity of facilities that they have. I think seating capacity at McMahon is about 2,000, but when you're talking about the field plus the seating, et cetera, what they are recommending is to watch for distancing, whether or not spectators can maintain distancing while at the facility. So based on that, I do recommend that all spring sports are played this spring. And I'm also recommending that home and away spectators are allowed at all athletic events this spring. By no means do I want to become the mask police or constantly be asking people to spread out, but I do want to give them the opportunity, especially after what happened last spring with the cancellation of all spring sports. That was obviously very difficult for kids and families. But this past winter, spectators weren't allowed either. And I think that was really difficult for kids and families, especially our senior players and their families. So I want to at least try this and see how this goes for allowing, all spectators. And if it does become an issue, we can always scale back and not allow spectators or only allow home spectators or something like that. But those are my two recommendations for tonight. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, any questions? Yep, Lorna?
Nate, would you go through the dates again on those capacity for spectators?
Yeah, absolutely. So effective March 26th through May 23rd, 75% of occupancy is allowed. And then May 24th and afterwards, 100% of occupancy is allowed.
Outdoors?
Outdoors.
Outdoors, yes.
All outdoors.
So this is for sports, for spectators to come and watch our kids play, which is great. But just so I understand, the guidelines for our students on the playground are still distanced as much as possible. Is that right? Patrick?
Correct. And these would be too.
Well, spectators, we're relying on spectators to be distanced. That's what.
Right, spectators.
And masked.
Right.
Yeah. And if kids are outside eating with their masks off, they still have to be 6 feet apart at lunch. Like if we get the tents back, the kids are still gonna have to be spaced and masked. Mm-hmm. But we could have hundreds of spectators. We're hoping all distance and mask. Right? I mean,
No, it doesn't.
I'm just being honest. Like,
no, it doesn't make sense.
That's what we're asking, is that we trust people in the community with different opinions. Many people will be vaccinated and probably feeling safe about that. And we're hoping that they do what our students are having to do every day. They're in school. I just wanted to get it out there.
Yeah, and I think part of this too, I just want to add part of this too, I think it'd be very difficult to not allow spectators, just thinking about all the different access points that we have to our facilities, from BMS, from Old Brunswick Road, out towards Tainer. There's just so many different access points that I think it'd be very difficult to not allow spectators at all. Not that it can't be done without some proper planning, but that is just something to consider as well.
And our students in high school still can't sing, is that right? Is that Patrick or Mr. Varney?
They can sing. It's Katie. They can sing with proper distancing and masks on, or outside. But yeah, it is humming is okay inside with masks on. Right now, none of our classrooms are able to accommodate what is allowed for singing indoors. So any singing that they're actually doing would be outside or on the computer. So singing, yes, but not in the traditional ways.
Your point is the inconsistency in the way that.
Yeah, and just to speak to that as well, you know, these requirements that we follow are from the DOE working with the CDC, and the requirements for sports are coming from somewhere else. So
I know.
they've always sort of been in competition with one another.
I know. These are the decisions that are tough, really, really tough. When I have to when we're saying some of our middle schoolers can't come back, and it's not apples to apples, but then MPA guidelines will allow spectators to be on the fields. So.
Right, and they do make it very clear that spectators are to remain 6 feet from one another, unless you're in the same household, but also 6 feet at minimum, 6 feet from any players as well. So, I mean, there'd be a expectation that spectators would not be on any kind of playing field, whether it's baseball or softball or tennis courts or anywhere, that they would be to remain outside of the fence or the gated areas.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Hi, Eric. I guess my question is that if you use the references of they're expected to, concerning the fans, they're expected to, or we'll try this to see if it works. I guess I'd be looking for a very clear rubric to say, when will it not work? Will it be individuals reporting to you? Will you be in charge of monitoring it to see if it's working? Will we have we had 3 infractions, so we're not doing this anymore? I mean, I'm probably looking for more detail than actually, but I'm just saying if this is gonna happen, then it's, if we can't, how do we know when it's not working?
Okay, that's a fair question.
I mean, we talked about only offering home contests. I mean, Nate's talked to a lot of different schools, and that doesn't make it right or wrong. But starting, I think Nate was recommending we start this way. He is the athletic director that is at all these contests. He'll be the one firsthand to know, along with his kind of other people that he uses, to take tickets or to monitor games. And if we have to continually talk to people, or we see people congregating, somebody not wearing their mask, again, you got to make a judgment call there. You don't want one person or 2 or 3 people to ruin it for the rest of the people that are coming and doing what they need to do. But if it continues to be just a policing for Nate, then it would be concerning. We would want to make a change. I don't know how many numbers it would take for us to do that, but.
Would it be based on, like, if all of a sudden we do this and our COVID numbers jump in Saginaw County, they start to spike, and now we have a lot of people attending our sports, is there a way to revisit that? I mean, would we have to decide on this once a week if we're gonna allow, I don't know where is it?
I think Nate has a baseline of how many people typically come to our outside athletic events. And I think that went into his decision making too. Nate, I don't want to speak for you, but typically what we get for a baseball game is manageable. What we get for a different athletic events in the springtime has never seemed to be, when he's reflected upon it, hasn't seemed like, you need to have extra crowd control or something that he hasn't been able to manage.
But if that's the only thing that people can do and there's nothing else and people have been cooped up for a long time, I would wonder if those might potentially really change, because people are desperate to go out and do something. You might see a whole bunch of, people show up that may not have showed up before. I don't know.
Yeah, Nate, is there any talk that, well, 2 things that kind of going along with what Lorna was saying, which I agree with. It's interesting that now it's going to be, we're trying to keep cohorts separate and all this, but now we're going to be playing teams that it's not just adjacent counties, which means where things are worse or where things, we've been pretty good in Saginaw. Now we're going to be playing teams where things aren't so good. So if the state's going in this direction, Jen, that speaks to they're not going to be able to prevent anyone from going 100%. by fall. I'm just saying, unless something drastically changes, this is the direction we're moving in now. It's gonna be very hard to stop that unless there's a huge outbreak. That's just my opinion. Nate, is there any talk about concessions? Like, are you gonna, now that this is opened up at home games, will there be concessions? Is that possible or not possible?
That's a good question, Lou. There has been some discussions around concessions. The guidelines, I haven't had a chance to go through them yet, but they do seem to be very strict in terms of what's offered in concessions. It has to be, as far as I understand, it has to be prepackaged food, chips, prepackaged cookies, bottles of water and soft drinks, things like that. Nothing, burgers and hot dogs and things that can be grilled or cooked wouldn't be an option.
Why wouldn't it be an option if other takeout restaurants do that? Is it because of what we have to do to make that compliance, or?
I think so, yeah. I know back in the fall, concessions, restrictions around concessions were very strict, and I think they've loosened a little bit, and able to what we can do. But I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to really dive into those guidelines yet. But that's my only takeaway so far.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to ask again, Nate, what was your conversation with Steve Alboni? Does Bath have social distancing requirements? I think you probably said it. I just can't remember what you said. I'm sorry. Social distancing and masking requirements.
Yeah. So according to what Steve had said, there really isn't a capacity limit for facilities right now. But what they're looking for, what they're recommending, is just to watch for distancing, as to whether or not spectators can maintain distancing while at the facility. So I do know that they put down some dots or some markers in their bleachers at McMahon to help try to space people out. We never really utilized them this fall. We didn't have football, obviously, and soccer and field hockey were very lightly attended. So those are there right now. And that's really what his emphasis is just to make sure that we can look for people being able to distance themselves.
Not masking necessarily.
And masking, absolutely. Masking is 100% mandatory. Yep.
And the city will be behind that, I guess my question. I mean, for me, I see, you're managing a crowd on city property, and if the city isn't absolutely clear what the expectation is, I don't see how you manage the crowd, but I don't see how you manage the crowd, anyways. I mean, you have other things to do than to go around tapping people on the shoulders and telling them to move away, to move down a couple seats because you're too close. I guess my only experience here would go back to graduation of, high school graduation of last year, when, these masking and social distancing requirements were certainly in play. And the majority of parents, for sure, complied. But there are just parents out there who, well, I shouldn't just say parents. There are folks out there who just don't want to comply, And none of it's mean-spirited. I mean, everyone had a great time at graduation, for sure. But there were folks that just didn't want to wear a mask, and they didn't. And I think you're just going to run into that, in this case as well. And I don't know what the risk, I don't know how that resolves, and still make it a good experience for the RSU. So, Jen?
I guess my question, is like Steve's, because you find someone who's not compliant for some reason, and then you tell them to leave, and then they don't leave. So what? Like, what is do you call, is it up to the city of Bath to make them leave if they're not complying? Or is it up to the RSU to make them leave? Or do jurisdiction or the resources to make them leave if there's a problem?
Yeah, I mean, Nate's going to be working with Steve Alboni to have signage up that talks about masks being required, social distancing. And anytime Nate's had a problem, let it be social distancing or something else, I mean, he's had the support of the Bath PD to come and help do that. I mean, it's a request made. If they're at an athletic event that we're sponsoring, even though it's on their property, we gotta work together with them. So it's worked well in the past.
It has, yeah. We had Bath PD at all of our home basketball games this year. There was no issues with fans trying to come into the game or anything like that. We did have Bath PD present at all of our fall events, outdoor events too. And even though it's a small sample size, we really didn't have any issues with people not, social distancing or masking. The only issue that I did have was, some students from a different school district showed up. I asked them to leave and they did. Really, it wasn't a big deal at all. So like I said, that's a small sample size, but hopefully that would be, what we would experience in the spring as well.
Any other questions? If not, are we looking at two actions here? One to approve or to authorize us to participate in the spring sports schedule, and then a second dealing with crowds. Is that what we're?
I mean, Nate's just offered. I mean, Nate's followed the NPA guidelines, and he's also recommending that. For the fans, I don't know if you need 2 votes, but that's up to you.
All right, a quick question before we vote, just for clarity.
Sure.
So middle school lacrosse games, for example, they're not MPA, right?
That's correct.
So there's no spectators at middle school level. And not just for lacrosse, but we didn't talk about, I just need to understand that if we can't get them back to school, are we also, are they not getting spectators either? And high school may? Is that right, Nate?
Yeah, so middle school loosely follows MPA guidelines. They're not governed by the MPA, but like Randy, for instance, and Shane, they'll follow the MPA guidelines based on what is sent out by the MPA, even though they're not mandated. So I guess I wouldn't speak directly to whether or not they would have spectators. That might be more of a question for Patrick and Randy, and more of a discussion on their end. But so the MPA does provide the guidelines, and the middle school follows them loosely. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, so I guess that's something that I think would be helpful to know, for clarity on whether we're shutting that down for middle school too, but not potentially high school spectators. And then my other just comment is, a lot of kids come to these games too. And let me just say, I want normalcy. I want everything normal, and I want sports and spectators. I want to watch my own child. The internal struggle, is the other decisions that we have to make that are so far more restrictive. It's just so difficult. So with families and children, that's going to be hard to enforce. It's hard to enforce in a normal year when children are running all around the fields having a great time, as they should. But we know that will be the case. That was just my comment.
Okay, so one way to proceed would be to take a motion that the RSU follow the Maine Principal Association's guidelines for spring sports, which would be inclusive of the schedule and also their policy on allowing spectators. If it's the pleasure of the board, we could break it into 2 motions if people feel strongly on the issue of spectators. I'm just looking for a motion.
Steve, can I ask a clarifying question about what Lorna just brought up? Are we voting just for high school, or would this be for middle school sports as well?
We'd like to have it be middle school and high school. Randy's got to go to they have league meetings, and I need to hear back from him about his league and, some more information about his league and games. So, middle school athletics start later than high school athletics. So we still have some time about the middle school piece when it comes to spectators.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, what's the timing on the spring sport? I mean, the outdoor schedule part of it. I mean, are we likely to be having games outdoors in the next?
For high school, we'll have games over April break, maybe the week before April break. So yeah, it comes up pretty quick.
Yeah, Steve, just to answer that question. It's about a month away. I think around the 23rd of April is when we'll start up.
Okay. I'm looking for motion.
I don't know how to word the motion, but I would like to know for sure if I'm voting on the spectator issue for middle school and high school, or just one or the other. So I'm happy to vote on sports, but I really want to understand the spectator issue for middle school and high school. However, we need to officially frame that.
I think you know what Nate's recommending for high school. The missing piece is middle school, which I can follow up with Randy about, and then let you know what we're recommending to you. And if you feel like the board needs to vote on that piece, if it doesn't mirror the high school, then we certainly can bring that back to the board. Like, we have time. I mean, the April 26th meeting would be before the middle school sports will start.
So if the recommendation is no spectators for middle school, then that means I voted in favor tonight. Is that right?
What I'm asking you to do is vote tonight for us to be able to offer the interscholastic sports and athletics for grades 6 through 12 in the district. And that's really it, with Nate's recommendations of, following the MPA guidelines, which include masks, social distancing, fan, monitoring.
Okay.
Steve?
Yep.
I would feel completely comfortable voting to support the student participation in spring sports. I'm hesitant about the fan piece. And I'm hesitant of voting for the fan piece for high school and then not voting for the fan piece for middle school and not knowing that, I don't know. It's going to be very hard to come back and say no to middle school if we're allowing these fans at the high school level. I mean, I think fans are going to just come to whatever. I think it's going to be very hard to actually effectively change that per.
Okay, so it seems that we need a little more clarity on the fans. I mean, we might not want to do that, but.
What clarity? I'm confused of why you need more clarity on unless the middle school folks come back with a more restrictive thing, I don't see why it would be any different than what MPA.
Well,
am I missing? I know I'm just trying to understand what I'm missing, because why would it be different?
I mean, again, I don't want to speak for Randy. I did invite him to this meeting tonight, but I would like to think that if we approved it tonight to allow fans, I can give you reports. I mean, I've already said to Nate this morning that I'd like a weekly report of how, if you've had any issues this week with spectators, and try to give people the benefit of the doubt to come watch their children play.
Yeah.
And if it becomes an issue for Nate or Randy, then we would scale back on that and just say, sorry, but we're only allowing home, or we're only allowing parents, no children at the games, no students at the games, unless you're playing in a contest.
Okay.
So we can, again, with that spectator thing, it's not it's a management thing. If the board can approve this tonight, and we have to back away on it, then we would just do that when we see that it needs to be done for the safety of our community and our student athletes.
Okay. Then
If the vote includes 6 through 12 to do sports and 6 to 12 spectators, understanding we're going to monitor it, then that I understand and I vote on.
That's what we plan to do.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose middle school, that's all.
We make the motion.
There still is some discussion on middle school, but that's what we're offering.
So is that your vote, or do you want me to do it? Did you want to?
Would you do it?
Yeah, so I'll move to approve Nate's recommendation for grades 6 through 12. Engaging in spring sports with the MPA guidelines for the spectators that we will monitor throughout the season. Is that
the
sufficient?
MPA guidelines on.
Was that a motion?
On sports.
Yeah, that's a motion.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
I'd be happy to second it.
You
So
have a second. Okay, so there's still opportunity for discussion after the motion has been made. Anybody want to?
Can I offer a friendly amendment that we would be provided with reports back on ban compliance once a week?
That we would get from Patrick or Nate?
Whoever,
Mhm.
that we would be informed of number of non-compliance or any non-compliance issues.
Mhm.
Could I offer a friendly amendment to your motion?
I'm fine with it.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion that we're going to, the board will vote to authorize the spring sports schedule pursuant to the MPA guidelines, which includes the spectator participation. And we will get, as Patrick sends out his weekly reports, we'll expect in those weekly reports an assessment of how that compliance by spectators is going.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. All in favor of that motion?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Jamie's, okay. Okay, thanks a lot, Nate. You certainly have your spring cut out for you. Good luck.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay, 12.4, we have the first reading of the FY 2022 proposed school budget. Patrick.
Yeah, I'll just go down through some things and just give the broad overview tonight as a first reading, and then open it up for questions. But just for the public, I mean, tonight is the first reading. It's just an introduction of the proposed FY 22 budget. And this process began in January when the administrators got together with the board. And really the purpose was to discuss highlights and strengths of the district, as well as areas of need or concern. And the next step in the process was for administrators to gather input from staff members with their cost centers for both labor and non-labor. And each administrator does meet with Deb and I to conduct a line item review of their proposed budget. The budget process we use reflects the work at the school and district level to maintain our commitment to supporting and challenging students to develop and apply the skills, knowledge, and character to be responsible and productive learners, citizens, and leaders in a global society. It also strives to meet the requirements set forth at the state and federal level, and also to further the district's educational plan. Again, we continue to strive to provide the best possible education for our students while being cognizant of the significant contributions that our communities have made and our taxpayers have made to support our programs, services, and facilities. Just to remind people that the budget process is fluid. This is the first time we're introducing it tonight. There'll definitely be some changes in numbers and possible programming, other things before the board does a second reading, which is a month and a half down the road, before they adopt this budget, before it goes to a district budget meeting. Some just important pieces of information to point out. State subsidy for the district, including debt service, which for board members is a little different than the report I gave you, during finance committee meetings. But if we're comparing apples to apples, when it includes subsidy, this year it is $16,669,456, which represents a $13,000 decrease over last year. Total enrollment is down approximately 50 students. Again, this is a difficult year. I mean, our district does follow kind of the trend across most of the state, not all of the state, about decreasing enrollment, but this is a difficult year to measure due to COVID, as some families have decided to homeschool, withhold students from pre-K or kindergarten, or elect to send their child to a private school setting. One other piece to mention is in a typical year, we may use $450,000 to $600,000 for balance forward, which is from our fund balance from the general fund. This allows us to reduce the bottom line of the budget. And so for this FY22 proposed budget, we're recommending, as you can see on the front cover sheet, that we use $850,000 as we spent less last year due to the pandemic. Again, this is helping to offset the overall increase, which ultimately has an impact on taxes. The total proposed budget right now is $38,816,265 compared to last year's $38,205,539. The proposed budget represents a 2.92% increase in the local contribution, and it is a 1.6 increase in total expenses. So next, I'll just give you the local contribution distribution, which is by town. So Rouseck right now, it would be a 5.69% increase. For Bath, it would be 2.45. For Pittsburgh, it would be 5.34. And for Woolwich, it would be 2.15. And for board members right now, and for anybody, if you go and look at the budget documents on our website, at the bottom of page 1, you'll be able to see the local appropriation history. So, I just gave you the numbers for this year if we don't make any changes to this budget, but you can also see the average over the last 2, 4, 6, 7 years for each one of our towns to kind of compare that. This budget does include an increase of a 0.4 FTE, full-time equivalent, in district-wide gifted and talented staffing, and a 6th grade science teacher at BMS. And then last thing, I'll just, on page 2 of your handout for board members right now, you can see the increase, the percentage increase and decrease of the cost centers. That's a big picture. So that's kind of the overview that I just wanted to provide, I guess, the public with tonight of where we are. But again, this is a first reading, and then on April 5th, we'll have more information. I think we'll have a finance committee meeting in between, and board members. We've gone through these meetings, and there has been discussion about this is a very difficult year for everybody, and that this percentage, does it need to continue to be discussed, obviously, through our process, and people, I'm sure, will speak up, board members, about their comfort level when we go through this process about the local contribution and the percent increase of a budget. So I'll stop there and just see what questions anybody has, or if other board members or finance committee members want to weigh in on with any questions or something that we missed. And again, Deb's on the line, and the other administrators are on the line as well.
Great, thanks, Patrick. So at this point, just so clear to the folks who have tuned in, this is the administration's proposal as a budget. The finance committee has worked on this to some extent in the meetings that Lou referred to. We'll continue to work with the administration and take input from the public at the public forum, which is now scheduled for April 5th. But in the lead up to that, any questions of Patrick regarding the budget? Lorna?
I was just wondering, Deb, she's still out there?
She should be. Deb, you still awake?
I am.
Well done.
She gets into the office very early, so I just wanted to.
Deborah, would you mind, for the public's sake, if anyone is still here, explaining how, we have a 1.6% increase in expenses, but the local appropriation is on this very new first budget is 2.92%?
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
basically the 1.6, you can see an increase in expenses of $610,726. So that's how much we're proposing to increase the expenses. So out of that 610,000, we need to generate the revenue to come up with that dollar amount. So what we're asking the public for is 556 and then those other revenue sources, help make up that. So basically, all those figures up above total that 610,000. We did have this current year 216,000, a one-time amount from the special purpose balance for the main PERS, which was for support personnel that was grandfathered through the city of Bath. So we were able to use that this current year, and that's gone next year. So that's that big decrease of 216,000. So that's another point with being able to increase the beginning balance is we also have to think about next year, and that's what we're facing right now with that main PERS. We have a decrease this year, but so all those amounts, along with the local contribution, total up that, get us to that 610,000 of where we need to be.
Thank you. And can I just, Steve, can I just make I only have one more comment, is enrollment, I'm looking at enrollment 2021 to 21-22 is down 74. But am I not reading that right, Patrick? Because you said around 50.
No, it's 74 on using these calculations here from the ED 279, but from our budget
Actual.
presentation that we gave you at the beginning of the finance, we were trying to take our most recent numbers from last year to this year. So this is the chart I was going by.
That's right. And then those numbers in the cover sheet here for enrollment were October. Is that right, Deborah? So
yeah, they're in October. They're considered subsidizable pupils, so basically resident pupils. And so that's how we do the formula, which is down in the middle box. We basically pull all that information from the ED 279, which is the subsidizable pupils. We multiply it out by a cost per pupil that's calculated through our cost formula. And then we subtract the subsidy that's allocated to each town to come up with our total assessment by town.
Okay. And then if we could just, and I know we will, but it's so helpful for me to see these enrollment numbers, these snapshots whenever we get together. So that'll be helpful, especially from now till fall. And I know we always have them, but I just wanted to say it is helpful and I appreciate it to see how it's trending, because we hope that trends back up for the following subsidy.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Pupil counts is essentially what drives the numbers. There is a single cost per cost per student that's applied. And then, as Deborah said, subsidy allocations are factored in. The other thing to note, although I don't have a percentage, I didn't do it, maybe Deborah knows offhand, but the single largest driver of the budget are labor costs. It is the single largest component of the budget. So as we look at some of the other programmatic costs that are factored in here, you just have to bear in mind that although certainly there are costs associated with that, it's really labor that drives the overall budget.
There's a breakdown on page 8 of the document that you're looking at that breaks it down by, the salary and benefits and debt service and transportation and all that. So that helps too.
So it's 60 plus, just over 60% associated with salaries and benefits.
And Steve, to that point, we are in contract negotiations with all of our labor costs right now. So we don't, we're going through that at the same time we're making assumptions here in the budget. So, what we looked at in this budget was the non-labor costs. So we didn't get into labor costs. We were presented information on non-labor costs. And that was the first blush of, you know, I think it was more what was on the most wanted list. I don't know if that was the absolute need list yet, and we'll continue to work through that. It's, I was kind of thinking about the other night, and I started thinking about, like, we've done a lot of adding to our budgets in the past and trying to, you know, I think we've really tried to support our communities with always an eye to the cost of it, but I think we've done really great things to build in new programs to the budget. But I've always kind of thought of it as our budget increases just a little bit, but hopefully as our economy has gotten better, everybody's income has increased just a little bit. So we haven't had a disproportionate, I mean, it's been a proportionate increase, you know, hopefully with more income for our communities and a little more cost for our education. This budget is built on a budget that happened before COVID, really. So this is a before COVID baseline that we're using to say we're increasing at 1 or 2%. And I think that our economy, a lot of people, their revenue, their incomes and financial resources have gone down. So I think that I think we've been trying to keep in line with the economic opportunity in our communities as we've built our budget in the past. But so I'm just trying to consider that, trying to understand what we're taking a percentage of and what we're increasing and what folks have the ability to pay for or not pay for. So it's a hard decision. We all go through it with a lot of thought. And as it's been said, this is the first presentation. So I urge and ask and request everyone in the community to be as involved as much as they can in this process, and, you know, give us your feedback and let us know, you know, how you feel about the programs that are in this budget, the positions that are being suggested to add to it, you know, and just let us know. We can only, more information, more feedback we get, the better.
Thanks. Any other comments at this point? And I certainly echo Jennifer's point to, I just urge everyone in the community to take a look at the budget and work through it as we work through it. So, any other comments at this point? No? Okay, thanks, Patrick. 13.0 is set next meeting dates and locations. 13.1, we have a regular board meeting scheduled for April 26th. It will be back here at 6 o'clock. Item 13.2, as we've referred to a couple times now, a public forum on the budget it has been scheduled for April 5th. And we will be here at the middle school at 6 o'clock, and it will be done remotely as we've done all our meetings. But I urge people who want to comment to please call in and let us know your thoughts on the budget. That public forum is also an opportunity for the board to continue its questions of the administration, as well as to receive comment from the public on the budget. We are going to do another finance committee meeting next week, and Lou and Patrick will work on a date, and we'll get that out as soon as possible. Okay. Any other? If there's no other business, I'm going to thanks everyone for going through it. Thanks to the administrators for your lengthy reports. I think I know there's going to be disappointed folks out there for sure, but I think getting our kids back, like I said, it was always going to be an incremental process, and we will continue to work. We will continue to work on that in the other buildings going forward. But at least for the middle school, we have a track, a pretty clear track forward, and we look forward to seeing what the results of that is. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Maybe motion by Luana. Second?
Second.
Second by Lou, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, okay, thanks, Jamie. Thank you.